slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past and the pettiness. A reflection of the emptiness, hilarious. You think you're with my time, you're delirious, mysterious, because you are behind the fake exterior, inferior. You know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah. Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Off Label Podcast, your twice weekly dose of sanity in an insane world with bonus episodes. Look, was going to bring the House Rules House Rules Committee thing going on. We still may at the end of this, but House Committee on the Judiciary is sitting down with House Democrats and Senate Democrats to talk about the pro-crime and pro-corruption agenda of Donald Trump. This is going to get incredibly stupid, ladies and gentlemen. We might as well get started. Get ready to be pissed.
Hey kid, don't ever let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you can get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got Muffin here with us. We got Carolyn. We got Shane in the house as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I went early because I saw this. And I had to bring it. I had to do it. I'm sorry. I had to because they're throwing little fits, ladies and gentlemen. Let me get right back on the right account here. They're throwing little fits. They're having their own little Democrat whatever. They're having their own fucking hearing to cry, whine, bitch, moan, and complain about how the things that they are doing, they're going to blame towards Donald Trump. Get ready for this shit, because it's about to get disgustingly stupid.
I call this hearing to order. This week, an immigration attorney at the Department of Justice told a federal court that he would implore his department to seek to return a man wrongfully deported to a maximum security prison in El Salvador, a man who had been deported in violation of a judge's order. And the department's response to this gross miscarriage of justice was not to accept responsibility or to take urgent action to correct the problem and seek the man's return. No, the department's response was to punish the department's own lawyer for speaking truthfully to the court, for what it deemed an act of insubordination, for failure to give full-throated defense to the department's illegal act. This is why we are here today. We are here today because the rule of law and democracy in the United States is under attack, not by a foreign adversary or some distant threat. The rule of law is being attacked and subverted from within, from an administration intoxicated by its own power and enabled by a supine Congress.
Sorry, I forgot to put that limiter back on.
Donald Trump is taking unprecedented steps to bend our justice system to his will, and his administration is moving systematically and swiftly to dismantle the legal pillars that hold up our democracy: the independence of the legal system, the idea of impartial justice, the right to counsel, and the principle that no one, not even a president, is above the law. If Donald Trump and his personal criminal defense lawyers, now running the Justice Department, succeed, the consequences will be profound. The impact will be felt by Americans from all walks of life and by future generations. This is why Ranking Member Raskin and I have taken the extraordinary step of convening this unprecedented hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House, to conduct real oversight and to serve as a check and balance, to hold those who misuse power to account and to carry out our constitutional duty. Convening this hearing was not our first choice. We have tried to get our Republican colleagues to hold hearings, to do meaningful oversight, to assert Congress's authority as an independent branch of government. But to our great disappointment, our Republican colleagues have abdicated that important responsibility. They have stood by as the president has run roughshod over the legislative branch and turned Congress into little more than a rubber stamp. So today we'll hold the first of what we hope will be more bicameral oversight hearings. We will do the investigative work that our colleagues across the aisle refuse to do. We will expose the illegality, abuse, and corruption of this administration and within the Department of Justice. We will have brave witnesses speak to what's actually happening behind closed doors, how the Trump administration continues to try to intimidate them from speaking out, and why it matters to Americans across the country. The Trump administration is following a well-worn playbook. History serves as a guide and as a warning. In the 1930s, a Jewish lawyer in Berlin tracked in meticulous detail how Germany gradually became what he called a dual state. First, to keep the country running, the ordinary legal system remained in place for most people. And yet, step by step, a parallel system of governance and law emerged, what one scholar called a lawless zone. A parallel system carry out the will of the leader and to go after his enemies, real or perceived, to punish, to reward, to co-opt, to intimidate, silence, or take over institutions that make a society free and vibrant: the courts, the lawyers, the universities, the press, even businesses. And over time, the emerging authoritarianism would swallow what remained of the rule of law. And now Hungary provides a more present-day warning. Methodically, Viktor Orban has tried to dismantle the independence of Hungary's judicial system, its education system, and free press, undermining democracy while pretending to uphold the law. And we have our own history that we must not forget. In the 1950s, in this very institution, Senator Joseph McCarthy and his enablers wielded the power of the government to go after perceived enemies. Many shamefully did not stand up at the time. Some chose expediency, political gain, or profit. Others thought they could weather the storm by cutting deals or staying silent. If this sounds all too eerily familiar, it is because it is. But there is a silver lining and a reason for hope. Those who defended fellow Americans then are now rightfully viewed as vindicated by history.
That shadow government that
the courage
they were
demonstrated by Americans in decades past and by brave men and women in other countries should serve as our inspiration and a roadmap for standing up for the rule of law, for each other, and for our democracy.
I'll get used to it.
Today's hearing, therefore, is a step towards real oversight and accountability.
Raskin,
our witnesses have demonstrated remarkable courage. Like Ryan Croswell, who resigned after witnessing, as we all have, the corrupt use of the Department of Justice's prosecutorial power by striking an illicit bargain with the mayor of New York to do the administration's bidding. These witnesses refuse to enable a two-tier system of justice that grants favors and cuts corners for the famous or wealthy. And as we'll hear today, they bravely stood up to ongoing efforts by the Department of Justice to intimidate them from speaking today, including when they planned to send armed marshals to the home of one of our witnesses, Liz Oyer, in order to discourage her from testifying today. These witnesses, like Stacey Young, are supporting others who continue to serve the public interest, continue to be employed by the Department of Justice, and who cannot speak for themselves. One of our witnesses, Rachel Cohen, stood up when her law firm would not, even as other law firms beat a path to the White House to capitulate to the extortionary campaign of the executive branch, even as that campaign weakens the right to counsel, the right of free speech, and the right to take on unpopular causes. Today's witnesses represent the...
You couldn't hear me? Shit. Is there something wrong again in OBS? Let's see. Mike is getting it. We'll turn. How about this? We'll turn the limiter down. Bring it down to 16. No, well, I was saying you might want to get used to it because you got Schiff there, you got Durbin there, you got Raskin there. Of course, you can see him on the side there. Let's see. Johnson is here. Is there? Zone Girl and other places. Oh, nice. Okay.
Antidote to the collective action problem we have seen when law firms, universities, and other institutions race to the White House to cut their own deals rather than stand on principle. In this defining moment, our institutions must not grovel before power. They must not retreat. They must stand together. They must lead. Law firms, universities, public servants, Congress, each has a unique role, an important role to play. Because a democracy that fails to hold power to account ceases to be a democracy.
All right, so I hope that's better.
Because we cannot allow the law to be twisted into a tool of personal or political vengeance or favor, and we cannot let threats to our democracy go unchallenged. Before we introduce the witnesses, let me turn to my colleagues, Ranking Member Raskin and Ranking Member Durbin, both of whom have demonstrated extraordinary leadership during this moment of profound challenge.
Is it any better yet?
I'm grateful that we are convening this hearing together.
Apparently my mic settings
dropped. I'm grateful for the courage of today's witnesses who have refused to remain silent. I now yield to my colleague, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement, followed by Mr. Durbin.
Well, thank you, Senator Schiff, for those moving remarks, and thank you, Ranking Member Durbin. Thank you both for working with us to hold this oversight hearing, which Republicans on neither side of the Capitol were willing to call. Special thanks to our witnesses today. Your bravery is inspiring to an anxious nation today. Even in the face of great pressure, each of you has stood tall and held fast to your oath to uphold the Constitution and the integrity of the legal profession. Just as the president has crashed the stock market with his illegal tariffs, he has crashed the justice system with his dreadful appointments and vindictive policies. He's filled the leadership of the Department of Justice with his personal lawyers, unapologetically extremist sycophants like Kash Patel and Ed Martin, who elevate their devotion to Trump over any semblance of fidelity to the Constitution, the rule of law, and the rules of professional responsibility. Our witnesses are people who have refused to bow down and be complicit in the way so many of our colleagues have been complicit. The president fires dozens of DOJ lawyers simply for doing their jobs in prosecuting the January 6th insurrectionists who violently assaulted and wounded more than 140 of our police officers.
Gotta waste your money doing this.
Nothing. The president issues executive orders banning disfavored lawyers and law firms from federal buildings, federal courthouses, federal employment, and federal security clearances unless they offer him blind loyalty and millions of dollars in free pro bono services for his pro-Malum causes, and the Republicans say nothing. Trump sacked 18 inspectors general who saved us $91 billion in actual waste, fraud, and abuse last year. His team gutted the Office of Public Integrity and suspended enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They withdrew prosecution of New York City Mayor Adams on serious bribery and corruption charges because he formed an alliance with Trump causing 7 top prosecutors to resign their offices, led by Danielle Sassoon, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, who clerked for Justice Scalia and was an active member of the Federalist Society. Our GOP colleagues are silent about these scandalous offenses. But House Republicans are outspoken about this. Many are calling for impeachment of the judges who've rendered 56 preliminary injunctions or temporary restraining orders against this reign of fear and terror. The president and Elon Musk go online and call them radical left rogue judges. Even Judge Boasberg, a pillar of the bar and chief judge of the D.C. District Court, who was first appointed to the bench by President Bush and was Justice Kavanaugh's roommate at Yale. We have only impeached 15 judges in the entire history of the United States, always for corruption offenses, bribery, tax evasion, habitual drunkenness, not even occasional drunkenness, habitual drunkenness, never for doctrinal disagreement with their rulings, much less when their rulings are manifestly correct. As Chief Justice Roberts put it a few weeks ago, the proper response to a decision you disagree with in the district court is to appeal the decision, not to impeach the judge. They're not making America great again, but they're definitely making the government corrupt again. We're grateful to you, witnesses, for having the courage to speak up against this outrageous corruption of our justice system as it came to affect you, and we're eager to hear your important stories. You will teach America how to stand tall. Ms. Oyer, I understand the Deputy Attorney General tried to send armed marshals to your home at night to deliver a clear message not to speak to us at today's hearing. And yet, I see you here today undaunted and unbowed, proving to Mr. Blanche and any other Trump official that you can't bully and silence everyone. That kind of courage is contagious, but we must emphasize to a watchful nation that courage is not the opposite of fear. Real courage, in fact, is experiencing all the fear, all the terror of these official threats and harassment, registering the fear of vigilante and online attacks, metabolizing the fear of your own government hounding you, but then pressing on anyway with conviction and passion for what you know to be right and lawful and just. No, courage, which is a virtue, is not the opposite of fear, which is an emotion, and indeed a necessary and adaptive emotion. Courage is a virtue, and it's the opposite of cowardice, which is a vice. The worst cowards are the tyrants and despots themselves who choose to terrify other people because they have allowed their own terrible fears and insecurities to turn them into monstrous, deformed, and cruel people. But the people who enable tyrants and despots, who do their bidding and work their will and flatter them and bow and scrape before them, they are cowards too, undoubtedly, at least if they have any choice in the matter. Every authoritarian regime runs on lies and runs on fear. Every authoritarian regime fears the truth and fears people who act justly and defiantly based on the truth. And that means they fear people like you and what you have to say to your fellow citizens. Thank you for recognizing the fear of this moment, feeling it, and nonetheless deciding to go ahead and act with courage and composure against the tyrant and his accomplices. I yield back to my very good friend, Senator Schiff, and I turn it over to Mr. Durbin for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Congressman Raskin. It's an honor to be here. All across America this last weekend, thousands of people, many whom never participated in a political event, came out to demonstrate their concern about the current state of the American government and what is happening with this administration. There were 1,000 in Springfield, Illinois, some 50,000 in Chicago, Illinois, and that story is repeated over and over again. We are at a unique moment in our history. Presidents have constitutional issues, virtually all do, but few have a constitutional crisis, which we are facing now in this country. I want to thank Congressman Raskin for coming here today, along with his colleagues from the House, and thank my colleagues from the Senate. But I want to particularly thank Senator Schiff. He's in a unique position, bridging the experience you had in the House of Representatives with this administration, and now your responsibility here in the United States Senate. I think this may be unique in American history, but it's certainly warranted, and I thank you for your leadership, Senator, in bringing us together. When you take a look at what we face today, it is truly a constitutional crisis. How did it start? Well, it certainly started with questioning a legitimate election and the outcome. Stop the Steal movement was an indication of pure effort to stop the Constitution from working its way. But the courts rejected President Trump's efforts to turn the results of the election, and now we see what he does in his second term. First, President Trump has gutted and weaponized the Department of Justice and our federal law enforcement agencies. The Justice Department is supposed to enforce our laws and protect our citizens, but President Trump appointed his personal attorneys to fill numerous senior positions at DOJ, including Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General. As many of us predicted, the new DOJ leadership has treated the Justice Department like the president's personal law firm. From dismissing corruption charges against Mayor of New York in exchange for supporting the president's policies, to restoring gun rights to domestic abusers who supported the president, to threatening universities that don't toe the MAGA line, the Justice Department has abandoned its commitment to the rule of law to advance the personal and political interests of Donald Trump alone. We need to fight back against this weaponized Justice Department. That's why I led the Judiciary Democrats in filing a bar complaint against Trump DOJ official Emil Bove for his role in corrupt bargaining with Mayor Adams. That's why I've led the Senate Judiciary Democrats in demanding an explanation from Attorney General Bondi for the firing of the pardon attorney and the restoration, for God's sakes, of Mel Gibson's gun rights. This brings me to the second way in which President Trump has threatened the rule of law, targeting law firms simply because they dared to employ attorneys who were involved in litigation or representations that the president didn't care for. We have long recognized the importance of parties before a court having representation by attorneys of their choosing, even in unpopular and politically charged cases. This goes back to the founding of the Republic. John Adams, our second president and one of the nation's founding fathers, famously represented 9 British soldiers accused of perpetrating the Boston Massacre. The right to counsel is so fundamental that it's enshrined in the Sixth Amendment. But instead of protecting and defending the Constitution, as he swore to do, President Trump has used his position to settle political scores and target law firms he deems insufficiently loyal. Over the past 2 months, he's issued executive orders and attempted to suspend security clearances, limit access to government buildings, and prohibit government contracts for certain firms. If those orders sound lawless, it's because they are. And multiple federal courts have appropriately blocked large portions of those executive orders. The Republicans on the floor and in the committee complain and moan and groan about all of the judicial cases that have been ruling against them, and many have. The fact of the matter is that this president has issued over 100 executive orders, many of which fly directly in the face of clear constitutional law. The president's actions pose an existential threat to the targeted law firms. Some have capitulated. For other firms, even the threat of future executive orders was enough to lead them to preemptively cut deals with the Trump administration. That, of course, is the point. The president wants to intimidate law firms so they'll think twice before taking on a client whose rights have been violated by the administration. That should alarm everyone. This is the kind of thing we expect from tin-pot dictatorships in other parts of the world. But these kinds of attacks on lawyers and the rule of law are unprecedented in the United States of America.
Well, he tried to speak up last time, some girl, and
I look forward to hearing from the witnesses, and thank you for
protesting
your
outside
courage
of his house
coming
and almost
forward
killing him.
today. It's important that we hear this story that each of you has lived. And I want to close by saying to all those who gathered across America and who communicate through social media, asking what Congress is doing to try to stop these excesses and these violations of the Constitution, remember what happens on this day, because on this day, I think we are making history at the right moment. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Ranking Member Durbin. We'll now introduce the witnesses, and these will be the briefest of introductions so we can leave more time for testimony and questions. But today we're joined by Liz Oyer, who previously served as the pardon attorney at the Department of Justice. We're also joined by Stacy Young, who previously served as an attorney in the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice. We're also joined by Ryan Croswell, who served as a federal prosecutor in the Public Integrity Section of the Department of Justice, and Rachel Cohen, who served as an associate attorney at Skadden, one of the largest law firms in the world. Thank you for being here, and we'll turn it over to you for opening statements.
What about me?
Ms. Ware, why don't you start us off?
How you doing, Jennifer
Thank
O'Connell?
you very much. Exactly 1 month ago today,
Can you turn your mic on or bring it close?
can you hear me now?
A little closer, if you would.
How's that?
Better. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for having me. Exactly 1 month ago, I was terminated from my job as the Justice Department's pardon attorney. The pardon attorney is a non-political position that is entrusted with advising
Audio
the
is still
president
low.
about
I
the
don't know how to
exercise of his constitutional clemency
I
power.
don't know what's going on.
When I was
in
fired,
my head, it
there were
sounds like
over
I'm screaming at you.
6,000 applications pending from ordinary
Okay, that one cut out.
Americans
In my
around
head,
the
it sounds like I'm
country
screaming at
who
you.
were seeking the president's mercy and second chances through clemency. I had planned to talk today about the events leading up to my firing, but some more recent developments have persuaded me to focus my time on the callous cruelty with which DOJ leadership is treating dedicated public servants like myself. For me, this began with my abrupt firing. It was 2 o'clock on
Maybe
a
if
Friday
you fix it that
afternoon.
way.
I was in a conference room meeting with colleagues from several different DOJ offices. We were brainstorming about how to implement a priority of the Attorney General. Halfway through the meeting, I was frantically pulled out by my deputy. In the hallway, she broke the news to me that security officers were waiting
All right, just
for
checking
me in
again.
my office to serve me with termination papers and escort me out of the building. I rushed back to my office. There, I was handed a 3-sentence memo signed by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, firing me effective immediately. I had never met Mr. Blanche, and I received no explanation for his decision. That afternoon, I walked out of the building for the last time carrying a grocery bag filled with my personal effects.
Sounds good on my side, Muffin.
I had no time to say goodbye to my team. I was in shock. Everyone I passed on the way out was looking on in shock and horror. I want Deputy Attorney General Blanche and Attorney General Bondi to know it is traumatic for everyone in an entire organization to see a beloved colleague and leader treated that way. My heart aches for my colleagues who had to go back into that office on Monday with no explanation from DOJ leadership and no assurances about what the future holds for them. They are good, dedicated people, and they deserve better. After I was fired, I chose to speak publicly about the events leading up to my termination. I felt that it was my obligation to share my concerns about the reckless and unethical use of department resources to accomplish political objectives, including favors for loyalists and friends. Shortly after I did so, Mr. Blanche contacted the media to accuse me of lying. This still puzzles me because his staff has all of the memos and emails that substantiate everything I have ever said. I requested those documents through FOIA, but Mr. Blanche's staff still has not produced them. I have made some other simple requests of the department since my firing. One was for my annual performance evaluations, which show that I received outstanding ratings every year. One was for personnel documents that I would need to file for unemployment. DOJ responded to me that these were complex requests and I could not expect a response in any reasonable period of time. For weeks after my firing, DOJ also refused to provide me with documents about my benefits, including my health insurance and including my retirement plan. Finally, on April 2nd, after my requests got some media attention, I got an email advising me that my health insurance would expire in 5 days. I learned that to extend my coverage, the cost to me and my family would more than quadruple.
Oh, you mean
I
like
was
everybody
told that
else
to
in
keep
the
my
fucking
family
world?
members covered, I would have to prove my
Or
familial
at least in this
relationships
country,
with
at
them.
least.
I was told that I would need to provide my marriage certificate, the birth certificate of my child, and proof of a common residence or joint tax filings with my spouse.
You mean you would have to prove that what you claim is true?
Perhaps the most personally upsetting part of the story is the lengths to which the leadership of the department has gone to prevent me from testifying here today.
Prevent you from
On
testifying?
Friday night
I don't think
around
that's true.
9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed the Department's Security and Emergency Planning Service to send 2 armed Special Deputy U.S. Marshals to my home to serve me with a letter.
Oh, you mean like when they do that to
The
regular
letter
American
was to be
people?
served at my home between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock on Friday night.
Just like American
I was
people?
in the car with my husband and my parents, who are sitting behind me today, when I got the news that the officers were on their way to my house where my teenage child was home alone.
Just like American people?
Fortunately, due to the grace of a very decent person who understood how upsetting this would be to my family,
Oh, so you get special
I
privileges.
was able to confirm receipt of the letter to an email address, and the deputies were called off.
Huh,
The
you
letter
get
had been
special
emailed to
privileges.
me just before 8 o'clock that night. At no point did Mr. Blanche's staff pick up the phone and call me before they sent armed deputies to my home. The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today.
No.
But I am here because I will not be bullied into concealing the ongoing corruption and abuse of power at the Department of Justice.
You mean the same shit that you
DOJ is
empowered?
entrusted with keeping us safe, upholding the rule of law, and protecting our civil rights.
When you mean keeping us safe, what do you mean? You? Because everything that you just spouted off is everything that every single American would actually encounter in their everyday lives if they were handed some papers to appear in court, or what, the loss of benefits because you lose a job, you get fired, you quit, whatever, the loss of benefits. You mean everything that you described is everything that an American citizen goes through, and you're crying and complaining about how corrupt it is that you got fired for levying war against the people using the federal government as your weapon. The fuck are you? What? Bitch, this is retarded. You got special fucking privileges to be able to say, hey, they're going to serve me papers? Okay, I'll just leave them at my doorstep. Let the police go away so I don't have to interact with them. My kids don't see it, please. Where if we did that in our everyday lives, oh, fuck no. There's going to be a huge debacle on your front fucking lawn. They'll shoot off fireworks to get everybody's attention that you got served some fucking paperwork. But you get special fucking privileges to call off the mob? Wow. And you're fucking crying about it.
It is not a personal favor bank for the president. Its career employees are not the president's personal debt collectors. I see only Democratic members here today, but this is not a partisan issue. It should alarm all Americans that the leadership of the Department of Justice appears to value political loyalty above the fair and responsible administration of justice. It should offend all Americans.
It offends
our
me that you're
leaders are treating
complaining
public
about
servants
getting
with a
treated the
lack
same
of
way I
basic
would.
decency
That's
and
what
humanity.
offends me, you dumb whore.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony and for the courage you're demonstrating by being here. Jamie, did you want to introduce Mr. Croswell?
It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ryan Croswell, who previously served as a federal prosecutor in the public integrity section of the Department of Justice, and Rachel Cohen, who previously served as an associate attorney at Skadden, one of the largest law firms in the world. We thank you both for being here. And now, Mr. Croswell, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Ranking Member Raskin, Ranking Member Durbin, Senator Schiff, and members of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees. For 10 years, I served as a federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice, but I started my career in public service as an officer in the United States Marine Corps.
Maybe you shouldn't have
I was motivated to join the military after September
gone
11,
against your oath
2001.
and played political
tried to
fucking
live my
lines with
life
your,
by the Marine Corps
your
ethos,
power. Maybe
honor,
that shouldn't have been a thing,
courage, and
and you
commitment.
wouldn't be here right now, faggot.
My career as a federal prosecutor started in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where I prosecuted white-collar fraudsters, drug traffickers, child predators, and violent criminals. I then served as a prosecutor in San Diego, California, where I prosecuted border crimes, including immigration offenses
Apparently,
and the
yes, Muff.
smuggling of dangerous drugs into this country from Mexico. Finally, for the last 4.5 years, I served as a prosecutor with the Department's Public Integrity Section. The Public Integrity Section was formed in the aftermath of Watergate, and it prosecutes corruption at the federal, state, and local levels.
Well, they should be prosecuting the fuck out of you.
Throughout my time with the Justice Department, I followed the principles that guide all federal prosecutors.
Do what the Dems
Follow
tell
the
you and you
facts
get
and the
promoted.
law, wherever they may lead. Seek justice in an even-handed and apolitical manner.
Hey, you failed at
Act with
those.
fairness, impartiality, integrity, and adherence to the rule of law.
Didn't do that shit.
On February 17th of this year, I resigned from the department as part of a sequence of events that can only be described as among the saddest in the department's history.
You knew you would be prosecuted and thrown in jail
I
for
want
what
to
you've
make
done.
clear that I had no role in the prosecution of New York City Mayor Eric Adams. My knowledge as to the facts and the evidence are limited to that which has been publicly reported. Let me also state that I speak for myself.
That was mine. And Adams
myself
is
alone.
innocent.
The chain of events that led to my resignation began when the acting Deputy Attorney General ordered the United States Attorney's Office in New York to dismiss the case against Mayor Adams.
You mean the case that was brought up because he said these immigrants are going to destroy the city, and then 1 month later, the FBI raids him because somehow the country of Turkey got him elected to mayor by giving him free upgrades on Turkish flights that he took? You mean that shit? That lie? That whole, oh my God, it's an attack on democracy? You mean that shit? Where every single fucking person could look at that, just a cursory glance and say, yeah, that's political fucking warfare. And, oh, okay, dismiss the charges. No, I will not. I resign. Shut the fuck up. You should have never been on that bench. But you wonder why hundreds of federal fucking judges and officials were pushed through their confirmation hearings before Trump took office. You wonder why that happened? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, they wanted to put these people in these positions to make sure that they could oppose Trump in every way. Look at these judges. These judges, they're going to do, but how many is it? It's been like in the first 3 months of this administration, we've had more injunctions than any other fucking president any other time. Anytime this dude takes a fucking step, you want to sue him. Get the fuck off the bench, bitch. Enough is enough with the goddamn retard shit. We will no longer live under a fascist fucking nation where Democrats think they fucking rule us. And that goes for Republicans too. You serve us. You don't rule us. Your impartiality on a fucking bench should get you at most, or at the very least, 10 years in prison. Because if you cannot hold everybody to the same fucking standard, then you don't need to be imposing any kind of justice on a person at all. Unless you are willing to take that justice yourself. So when you let one person get away and put another person in jail for the same goddamn thing, like you did time and time again with all these motherfucking people, when you let that happen, your ass deserves to rot in prison just like everybody else would. You don't get no special privileges, bitch.
This was not based on the prosecution's merits.
Stop crying,
And we
bitch.
know this because he openly acknowledged in a memorandum that department leadership had decided to dismiss the case, quote, without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based.
The legal theory of the country of Turkey got the motherfucker elected to mayor of New York City. Now, I could understand you could have an argument if he was president. You could have an argument if he was in a house, if he was actually high up in the federal government. But the mayor of New York City, the country of Turkey, got his ass elected. Now, fuck off with that goddamn retard shit.
This action leveraged the threat of future prosecution to ensure political compliance. The message that this sent, intentionally or unintentionally, was that public officials may be prosecuted or may be protected from prosecution as long as they're politically aligned with the Trump administration. In a properly functioning justice system, any public official wishing to avoid prison has to live by one rule of thumb: obey our nation's laws. And this action raised an even more chilling question. Is the Justice Department that will drop charges against those who acquiesce to a political demand a Justice Department that will bring charges against those who don't? When the acting U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York stood up for the rule of law and resigned rather than carrying out the order, the case was transferred to the Public Integrity Section. When our acting chief and our deputy chiefs stood up for the rule of law and resigned rather than carrying out the order,
No, because he was getting
the remaining attorneys in our section
promoted.
were ordered
Muffin.
to find
He
two
was doing what they
attorneys to sign
wanted,
a
so he
motion to
was getting
dismiss.
fast
Ultimately,
tracked through everything.
One of our attorneys signed the motion to stop the destruction of the section. The Public Integrity Section has protected the American people against abuses of power for nearly 50 years.
No, you have
But it was
abused the
nearly
American
eliminated
people.
in an hour over a dismissal of charges against a man that a grand jury had found to have engaged in a criminal abuse of power himself.
And they should go after you for your
At this
fucking
point,
crookedness.
Too many lines have been crossed, and so I too resigned. The threats against current members of the legal community, both in public service and private practice, are real, and they're of consequence. To those attorneys facing such threats, I share with you a message that I received on the day that my colleagues and I were ordered to dismiss the Adams case. It came from a fellow Marine.
Everything's all
It read,
flash.
keep your head up and keep your values and your
Because I got
oath
that screen
at the
maximized
forefront.
and it's gonna flash. Sorry.
Every attorney who takes an oath to uphold the law and every citizen who values democracy must have a line in the sand that cannot be crossed. Speaking out and doing the right thing increasingly comes with personal risk. But the day after I resigned, my sister had her first daughter. And I want my niece to know the same democracy that I've known. That's worth any cost.
I'd agree with his own girl.
That's worth
If he
fighting
were
for.
moral, he would have resigned long ago.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crosswell.
Cry baby bitch. You don't see any tears in
Ms.
anybody's
Cohen,
eyes?
Your opening
You're a
statement,
failure.
and I should take a second of personal privilege over here in the Senate just to say that Ms. Cohen was very close friends with my son Tommy at Harvard Law School, and he always told me that you were a woman of great intelligence and great character. It's good to see you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to the members today. I acknowledge this is not the first Monday of unemployment that I anticipated, but I am
Are you going to
appreciative be
cry
here.
over losing a job?
On March 20th, I tendered my conditional
wanted to try to
resignation to
stay
Skadden
corrupt?
Arps, where I was employed as a finance associate. I did so because I believe our country is teetering on the brink of authoritarianism, and that many leaders of our most prestigious and profitable law firms recognize this risk and choose to ignore it because they are afraid. It's likely they're afraid of
authoritarianism
losing
when
profits,
It's not
But I think
you
it's also
empower
likely
them,
that
right?
these leaders are
But it's
afraid
justice
because
when you
standing
are.
up to authoritarianism is scary. It is easier to ignore what is happening than to acknowledge the fight that lies ahead.
Acknowledge what is happening. Okay. So acknowledge what is happening. You're being held accountable for the fucked up shit you did to us. Rather than challenge what's ahead. Bitch, what's ahead is righting the fucking wrong that you did. I love how it's authoritarianism when you're the one not in control. But when you're in control, it's justice in the American fucking way every time. I love it. You guys are too fucking pussified to sit there and say, oh, if anybody else does the same actions I do, then it's authoritarianism. But if I do it, it's wonderful. It's great for the country. Y'all are too pussified to understand the same damn shit. Whether you do it or somebody else does it, it's still the same damn shit. It's that same shit sandwich, just flip the fuck around. You don't like it? You shouldn't have made everybody else eat it, right then, ho? Why the fuck do you exist? Why the fuck are you crying? You sit here and argue, oh, all these things that Trump are doing are so fucking wrong, but under the Biden administration, we got to imprison people for just praying on the street corner. We got to imprison people for just speaking their mind. We got to imprison people for us setting up January 6th. We got to imprison people and make them look bad and try to ruin their lives simply because they stepped out of fucking line and didn't feel like getting beaten to submission. But now those people are beating you into submission to give you a little bit of taste of your own fucking medicine, and now somehow it's bad. It's bad when you're getting your ass beat, but it's wonderful for the country when we're getting our asses beat. We're still on YouTube. I can't say what I was going to say, but swing.
I resigned amidst a series of attacks on the legal profession that began on February 25th when the Trump administration stripped large law firm Covington and Burling of government contracts for representing special counsel Jack Smith during his investigation of the president.
Yeah, let's talk about that, where he took an oath of office for a lesser fucking office that cannot bring the charges up. And it was found out in Florida, Judge Cannon said, hey, you're right. He does not have the authority to bring these actual charges. Case dismissed. And then Chutkin says, fuck it. We're just going to continue anyway because Orange Man bad. At Jack Smith, bitch, please shut the fuck up for once in your pathetic ass fucking life. Your crybaby whiny bitches didn't get your fucking way, and now you're crying about how it's so fucking horrible we live in a fascist authoritarian regime now because Orange Man won after we broke every single law that we have ever fucking had in this country to try to put him in prison. Just because we couldn't beat him at the ballot. It's time to shut your fucking mouth. How about you leave the fucking country? Because that's the only thing that's going to save you from what's fucking coming.
Then, the president entered an executive order against law firm Perkins Coie, not only stripping Perkins of government contracts, but also targeting third-party contractors that retain Perkins as counsel. Again, the administration named Perkins' past representation of clients and causes the president dislikes as the cause.
It's interesting that you sit there and say, oh, they're representing everybody that the president dislikes. It's interesting that they're going after certain people. It's like, almost like the whole goddamn law firm is just trying to pick up case after case after case just so they can throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. It's almost like they're trying to make a name for themselves and instead of actually standing up for the rule of law and doing what the law actually says. It's almost like y'all motherfuckers are trying to twist lawfare in your favor so that you can imprison anybody and everybody at any point in time just for speaking out against you, retarded sacks of shit. Oh, I guess that's a right-wing conspiracy theory too, right? Thousands have been arrested just for being Trump supporters. You drum up some kind of fucking charges. Just like Mayor Adams stepping out of line. Oh, you drummed up charges on his ass. You tried to throw him in prison because he stepped off the Democrat plantation. The fuck?
Perkins chose to fight back. It challenged this blatantly unconstitutional order and successfully won a temporary restraining order the next day. In a normal presidency,
Successfully won a temporary restraining order just to say, hey, this does need to be litigated, so let's put a hold on everything that we're doing so that way we can find out yes or no if this is actually you won by simply going through the process. Bitch, that's not how this fucking works. That's not how any of this fucking works. You just do what you want to do because you hold these institutions, you hold these judges, you hold these places of fucking power. You think you have everybody wrapped around your fucking finger? Bitch, do you remember how this fucking country started? We got no problem doing it again.
this sends a message to the administration: press pause while the Perkins executive order is litigated. But the president continued to enter executive orders targeting firms based on past representation. Enter Paul Weiss, the next target of an executive order. Instead of fighting back, Paul Weiss offered the Trump administration $40 million in pro bono legal services for pet projects and promised to evaluate hiring and retention practices in partnership with the president. He withdrew the order. Paul Weiss's decision was a stunning betrayal of the firm's associates and the legal system that made its partnership very, very rich.
You mean he was ordered to do something by the president of the United States and he did it? And somehow, some way, some fucked up way that's supposed to be illegal? Shut the fuck up. That's proof of corruption because somebody does something that the actual president orders them to do. But yet, if they did it under Biden, if they tried to ignore what Biden said, these motherfuckers went to prison. But you can ignore what the president says now, and you're a freedom fighter for democracy? It don't sound right, bitch. It never will. I don't think I'm actually going to get through this.
Was not my first choice.
Let's
Throughout
stop
this period, associates across the industry were engaged in measured advocacy internally and externally, hoping to get our firms to band together and stand up to the administration's attacks on the broader legal profession. Paul Weiss's capitulation made me realize firm leadership was not motivated to act collectively. I became certain my employer was not going to be brave, and so I resigned. I was heartbroken to be proven right 8 days later on March 28th, when Skadden promised the Trump administration $100 million in pro bono legal services despite no executive order being entered against them. Other associates resigned in protest, 2 of them publicly. They're sitting behind me, and I am so unbelievably grateful.
Corruption be shut down?
We did so because our adversarial legal system only functions when parties have representation.
Laws that they have broken.
Everyone deserves an advocate. That principle is invoked by law firm partners to justify high profit but distasteful representation.
Some of them have committed treason.
Everyone deserves an advocate.
Charge them all. Have them justify their actions to the American people.
Without skilled lawyers, meritorious lawsuits may never be brought in the first place. Public interest attorneys, themselves separately targeted by the administration, are now also scrambling to replace resources and attention these firms historically provide as they challenge unconstitutional actions and provide direct representation to clients in need. This is intentional. Courts are perhaps our last line of defense against authoritarianism. I was raised to advocate and to be aware of the racial, financial, and other privileges I hold that make it more likely that my voice will be heard in halls of power. I am the daughter of 2 government attorneys who both served their country in the United States Air Force. While in high school in Ohio, my best friend was one of the only Latina students in our graduating class and faced overt racism. And I remember following a particularly egregious incident when we went to the principal together, how my outrage was heard as much or more than hers. After studying political science at The Ohio State University, I spent 4 years teaching in Providence Public Schools, and my students, some of whom I know are watching right now, are brave and smart and bold, but there were many times where despite the self-evidence of my students' brilliance, people did not believe it existed until a white native English speaker pointed it out. Acceptance to Harvard Law School and employment at SCAD made my already powerful voice even louder. The cowardice or apathy in some of these spaces at times caused disillusionment, but those dear to me, including your son, Congressman Raskin, made sure I remembered that just because such cowardice is common doesn't make it acceptable. And as you said, courage is a choice.
Wait. You're Raskin's child's fucking This makes sense why you're here.
I was asked here because my voice is loud, but I came here for the same reason I resigned. It is important for the very real people whose voices are not heard in the same way to have an advocate today and always. This advocacy cannot be defined by fear of future retribution. My students and non-white friends and colleagues deserve brave advocates. Mahmoud Khalil, Rumaiza Ozturk, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, and Andre Jose Hernandez Romero deserve brave advocates. People
They were
seeking abortion
illegal.
care or birth control or gender-affirming care deserve brave advocates. And to be clear, everyone else, the law firm partner.
So you want parents to be able to mutilate their children because the parents wanted a son or daughter instead of the one they got? Bitch, I swear to God. Y'all are too fucking retarded to exist.
Partners enabling this slide into autocracy, the voters who put Trump into office and are waiting and will wait forever for him to care about the difficulties that they face. Those of us in this room today, we all deserve brave advocates. The administration cannot pick and choose who gets representation. It cannot use executive power to scare lawyers out of advocacy. If we allow any president to dictate who deserves a lawyer, our legal system fails. Like firm leaders, I am afraid.
The president isn't dictating who deserves a lawyer. They're getting their due process by figuring out if they're illegal or not. They're getting their due process by deportation. They're getting their due process. They're getting their court-appointed lawyers for this shit. They're getting it. I don't know what you're talking about, woman. Other than the fact that you want American taxpayers to fully vet through every bit of everything that the federal government can do to fully vet every single human on the face of this planet to see if they're able to come into this country right now or not. It is disgusting as fuck that you think my taxpayer dollars should be going for that just because you want a new voter base and you want to boost the fucking American economy. From after all that crying about not having children, you want to use illegal immigrants to boost the American economy that you tried to fucking tank because we couldn't keep up with making enough jobs to keep that economy booming. And now we are in a fucking crisis where we don't have enough people to keep up with the jobs that we have at this point in time. So let's throw illegals into the country, give them all amnesty, put them to fucking work. Ladies and gentlemen, economy's booming again. That was the reason for it all. Every bit of it. Every damn thing under the Biden administration with the border, that was the reason for it. They told you to stop having kids because we were going to overpopulate the planet. We were going to run out of resources. Just stop doing that and, oh shit, now we can't even keep our own economy going at the level that would be needed for sustainability. Fuck, what do? Bring in all illegal immigrants that we actually can. What the fucking hell is that?
Afraid of where this intimidation campaign leads. But unlike most of them, I will not allow my fear to manifest as silence. I choose courage. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and I hope your courage and that of your two colleagues seated behind you will be contagious among the bar. Ms. Young, thank you for your service in the Civil Rights Division, and you're recognized for your testimony.
Thank you. Ranking Member Raskin, Ranking Member Durbin, Senator Schiff, and members of the committees, thank you for the opportunity to appear at this important hearing about the ongoing attacks on the Justice Department. After 18 years as a career litigator in DOJ's civil rights and civil divisions, I recently founded Justice Connection, an organization mobilizing DOJ alumni to support the department's workforce. The Justice Department's 115,000 employees come to work every day to uphold the rule of law, keep our country safe, and protect our civil rights. All but a few hundred of these employees are career civil servants. The department's employees shield our communities from gun violence, prevent terrorist attacks on American soil, investigate and prosecute drug traffickers responsible for the deadly fentanyl epidemic, and so much more. Yet the Trump administration has unleashed an all-out assault on these public servants who are now facing attacks on their employment, their integrity, their well-being, and even their safety. Over the past 3 months, employees at all levels have been fired, suspended, demoted, and reassigned.
Good.
They include senior career
They were
officials
doing
across
nothing
the
anyway.
department, including in law enforcement components like the FBI and ATF. They also include officials assigned to cases disfavored by this administration. Many have been forced to resign rather than follow orders they concluded were unethical or unlawful. The attacks on the department's workforce are too widespread and numerous to catalog in a single hearing.
What up, Penguin?
But I'd like to highlight 3 particular aspects that are especially alarming. First, the administration's purge of career law enforcement and national security employees makes us less safe. Congress should be deeply concerned about the termination of some of the most senior leaders at the FBI and the ouster of top officials from the department's National Security Division, Criminal Division, and ATF.
So which one are we?
Removing these
Are we all
investigators and
psychopaths or
prosecutors
sociopaths
has
there,
left our
Penguin?
communities more vulnerable to violent crime and terrorism. Proposals to restructure and downsize the department's law enforcement work, for example, by merging ATF and DEA, will only make the problem worse. Second, the department's political leadership is getting rid of career employees because they refuse to behave unethically. To be clear, career employees should carry out the policy priorities of the executive branch, even when those priorities change across administrations. That's why long-term career lawyers like Erez Raveni zealously represent the interests of the United States in controversial cases, regardless of underlying policy judgments. But department officials must still follow ethical requirements, court rules, governing statutes, and the Justice Manual. Increasingly, career employees are being told that to keep their jobs, they must ignore their ethical duties and oath to uphold the Constitution. We should all be grateful to Erez Raveni and others who choose the rule of law over partisan loyalty, a choice DOJ employees should never be forced to make. Finally, the interim U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia has run roughshod over prosecutorial norms, threatened investigations of dedicated career prosecutors, and carried himself as a general in the president's war on his enemies instead of a backstop on crime in our nation's capital. Ed Martin Jr. came to the job with no prosecutorial experience and a history of representing January 6th defendants who his new office spent years successfully prosecuting. He's destabilized his office by firing prosecutors involved in those cases and demoting widely respected supervisors, in the process cratering morale and unit cohesion and eroding the judgment, experience, and institutional knowledge that are essential to the office's vital work. If his reign continues, DC will be far more vulnerable to drug trafficking, terrorist attacks, and violent crime. The animus facing DOJ employees is unlike anything I saw in my nearly 2 decades of service, and I don't believe there's any precedent for it in the department. The judgment, experience, and institutional knowledge that are essential to the office's vital work. If his reign continues, DC will be far more vulnerable to drug trafficking, terrorist attacks, and violent crime.
DC will be far more vulnerable to drug trafficking, terrorist attacks, and violent crime Just simply because we don't have the ability to use the court system the way we see fit? Wait. What do you mean by that? Are you going to say you're going to start pouring drugs into DC? You're going to say you're going to start committing terrorist attacks in DC? Are you saying you're going to do all that? Because every time one of you people have said something like that, it tends to happen by your own protesters. So are you going to sit there and tell me that you motherfuckers are now planning terrorist attacks in DC just to prove a point? Fucking frightens me.
The animus facing DOJ employees is unlike anything I saw in my nearly 2 decades of service, and I don't believe there's any precedent for it in the department's history. We can't expect employees to counter these attacks alone. Protecting them and DOJ's mission-critical work must be a top priority of every member of your committees and of all.
Jennifer, thank you for the $10 super chat. I am proud to be OLP's first super chat. Congratulations. Thank you. I didn't think it was going to happen, but they just said, fuck it. We'll see what happens, I guess. But yeah.
All Americans who will suffer if the department is destroyed. Thank you.
What up, Jennifer?
Mr. Raskin, do you want to begin questions?
It
Thank
happened,
you very
Shane.
much.
I wasn't going to
Mr.
bring it
Lawyer,
up, but it happened.
The DOJ tried to stop you from coming today because they were very eager to silence your voice. You were fired hours after you refused to agree to the Deputy Attorney General's demand that you sign your name to a memo and that you recommend that Mel Gibson, a convicted domestic abuser who also happens to be a friend of Donald Trump and his special ambassador to Hollywood, get all of his gun rights restored. Is that right?
That's right.
And you refused to be complicit in that sequence of events because you had serious concerns. You said, quote, he is the profile of exactly who you would not recommend for this type of relief, citing his history of domestic violent abuse, alcohol abuse, and so on. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you were fired just a few hours after you told the Deputy Attorney General that you could not go along with this request.
Within hours, yes.
Now they're disputing your account. They're calling you a liar. You filed a FOIA request to demonstrate exactly what happened. Have you gotten the documents back yet?
I have not gotten any of the communications between myself and members of Mr. Blanche's staff, which illustrate that everything I have ever said about this matter is true.
And we have some of your contemporaneous communications with your own colleagues that corroborate your account.
That's right. I did, pursuant to FOIA, get some documents that were in possession of the Office of the Pardon Attorney, and they also corroborate my account.
All right. Then they had sent 2 armed marshals to your home to try to intimidate you with a letter telling you not to come today. Why did you decide to come?
I came because I don't want to be complicit in what is happening inside the Department of Justice, which is the misuse of the resources of the department to do political favors for friends of the president, for loyalists, and I just don't believe that that's right, and I don't want to be part of it, so I feel that I need to speak up.
Your courage is heroic to us, and I want to say to you and your family, thank you, and we are with you, and we're going to stand by you. Just this past weekend, we saw another shocking example of retaliation. DOJ suspended the prosecutor who had stated in court that a man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia of Maryland, had been erroneously deported to El Salvador as an administrative error and imprisoned there, where he faces serious danger and gang violence. The judge in the case demanded that the Trump administration seek Garcia's return to the United States, and the administration is, despite confession of its error, arguing to prevent Mr. Garcia's return, saying he's out of the custody of the United States, and they wash the hands of the matter. Ms. Young, is there any doubt in your mind that this prosecutor's suspension was retaliation simply for speaking the truth in court, as this prosecutor was sworn to do?
That's what the facts seem to suggest.
Well, I think that all of these events should stir the conscience of America, and we thank you all for stepping forward now to sound a cry about what's taking place. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin. I just want to put a fine point, Ms. Oyer, on your testimony. You applied the same standard, did you not, with reference to Mel Gibson, you would apply to anyone. That is, you looked at the facts to determine whether you should recommend restoration of gun rights. You didn't consider friendship with the president or any other impermissible consideration. You just looked at the facts. Is that right?
Well, Mr. Schiff, let me say that this is a project that was not within the normal purview of the Office of the Pardon Attorney. There was no real interest from this administration in considering the work that this office normally does, which is provide advice that is non-political in nature to the president about how to use his constitutional clemency power. So this whole project was something that was very different. It was not the normal work of the Office of the Pardon Attorney, but we jumped in and tried to do our best to support it because we understood that it was a priority of the leadership of the department. And in doing so, a primary concern was considerations of public safety. Would we be able to recommend that someone could safely receive their firearm rights back? And that was my concern in the case that you have discussed, that I did not have enough evidence in front of me to make the recommendation that that could be done safely.
So based on the evidence in front of you, you didn't believe it could be, the restoration of gun rights to Mel Gibson could be done safely?
I did not have enough information to convince me that I could recommend that it could be done safely.
And, you know, your description of the Office of the Pardon Attorney raises another question, which is, was your office consulted on the, 1,550 pardons of the January 6th insurrectionists that were granted by the president?
I learned about those pardons on the news, just like every other American.
Now, to your credit, Schiff, you didn't take it, but wasn't the January 6th committee offered a pardon? Huh. Why would you need a pardon if what you did was correct? Now, I will give it to you. You didn't take that pardon. I give that to you. You know what that means, right, Schiff? Oh, son, it's gonna fucking hurt.
And were you the head of that office?
I was.
I remember Pam Bondi testifying, I think in this very room, that she was going to go through those cases one by one. Normally, a pardon request for any of those individuals would have gone to your office for review and examination to determine if there was a grounds or there was acceptance responsibility or service of time or whatnot. Would that have been the process?
The ordinary process is that individuals apply through the Office of the Pardon Attorney. The office carefully vets the applications that we receive, and we look at all of the individualized factors that would support or weigh against a pardon in a particular case, and we make a recommendation on that basis. That's not something we were asked to do in that context, and in fact, it's not something that the office, as of the time of my departure, had been asked to do at all in the context of clemency grants by this administration.
So in the case of Mel Gibson, there was one standard for a friend of the president for a Hollywood celebrity with respect to gun right restoration, regardless of the public safety issue. In the case you testified about, Mr. Croswell, you resigned after your office, attorneys in your office, were asked to dismiss a case against the mayor of New York, which a grand jury found probable cause to believe he had engaged in corrupt acts. Your attorneys were asked, your colleagues were asked to dismiss that case, not because of any flaw in the evidence, not because of any insufficiency in the evidence, but because of some kind of a bargain between the Department of Justice and the mayor regarding an unrelated policy matter, that is immigration. Is that your understanding from the public record?
Senator, the memo that the acting Deputy Attorney General sent to the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York explicitly stated that it wasn't based on the facts or the legal theories.
I have no idea where he's going with this either.
That was very explicit.
And I was an assistant U.S. attorney for almost 6 years in California, and I just want to underscore how truly extraordinary that is what you just testified.
This motherfucker was a U.S.
that
attorney.
A meritorious case
Jesus Christ, we fucked up a long time
is
ago.
dismissed against a politician, not because of a flaw in the evidence, not because of any prosecutorial misconduct, but because of an interest in having that politician carry the president's water over unrelated
Look,
policy
even
matters.
Durbin doesn't know where the
I never
fuck
saw
he's going with
anything like
this.
that in my almost 6 years in the department. Have you ever seen anything like that in your experience?
Senator, and really from when you start as a federal prosecutor, you're trained that everything is based on the facts and the law. We prosecute based on the facts and the law, and that ensures that we're holding the bad guys accountable, and innocent Americans remain free. As long as it's based on the facts and law, that's the best way for us to be doing our job effectively to keep the American people safe.
And I just want to underscore before I turn to Ranking Member Durbin, something you said in your testimony too, which is if the Justice Department believes that it can intervene in the case of
I got to take this.
friends of the
You gotta
president
see
like
this.
Mel
Hold
Gibson
up.
to give him special treatment, or in the case of the mayor of New York to give him special treatment because
Durbin.
of unrelated policy help to the president, they can also weaponize that same Justice Department against the president's perceived enemies. And Senator Whitehouse has well demonstrated how that
that
principle
racist
has
fuck?
applied in going after funds made available for renewable energy projects under the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you for your testimony, and I now yield to Senator Durbin, Ranking Member Durbin, for his questions.
Thank you, Senator Schiff. And let me say to all of the witnesses who are here today, this remarkable hearing should help to
He was
restore
behind the chat and everything, but Durbin
the
was just
nation's
looking at him
faith
like,
in the
what the fuck
democracy
are
and
you
the courage
talking
of the
about?
witnesses who have come here today to testify, and the courage of their family who stand behind them. Ms. Hoyer, it's my understanding that there are guidelines to be considered with pardon petitions. And among those guidelines, there's a requirement that they be granted in part based on, quote, the petitioner's demonstrated good conduct for a substantial period of time after conviction and service of sentence, and that, quote, a petitioner should be genuinely desirous of forgiveness rather than vindication. One of the first acts of office, obviously, of President Trump was the full unconditional pardon of 1,600, the number I'm not sure of, but I think it's in that range, of those who participated in the insurrectionist riot here in the Capitol. Most of us at this table were
I think I'm
witnesses
actually
to
starting to
those
try to get
crimes
myself an aneurysm.
and certainly
All right.
understood what happened to the men and women in law enforcement who still protect us to this day and risk their lives for us on January 6th. I've taken a look at some of those who were given these pardons and gone through what they have done even since, in the few weeks since that happened. It is outrageous, some of the conduct that has been well documented. My question to you as a pardon attorney at the time, were you consulted on the pardons of the January 6 rioters?
I was not consulted. No member of my office was consulted about those pardons.
What would have happened to the pardon request for January 6 offenders had the normal DOJ pardon process been followed?
None of them would have got him.
Had any of those individuals applied for a pardon, they would have been in due course fully vetted on an individualized basis, and the office would have formed a recommendation about the individual applicants, which would have been provided to the president. The whole role of the office is to ensure that some uniform and consistent standards are provided, and more importantly, the role is to ensure that people who are waiting their turn, who have meritorious cases, that those cases can make their way to the president's desk. Those folks who have access to the White House through the front door, they don't need the help of the Office of the Pardon Attorney to elevate their cause. And there are thousands of ordinary Americans who are seeking the mercy of the president through the clemency process who are not being considered right now because the office is not being consulted. There are
Ma'am, if the office was not being consulted, this wouldn't have happened. And yes, I have full permission by Glenn himself to show you, ladies and gentlemen, he wanted me to leave everything unredacted. Our own viewer, watching the watchers, our own, got his pardon. It wouldn't happen if people like you were in consultation about these things. These things wouldn't have even happened. We know this. This is why y'all were left the fuck out of it. And you're crying so much about not being able to keep these people under lock and key and even prison because you set shit up. Yeah, we knew that wouldn't have happened. So that's the reason why y'all motherfuckers weren't consulted. And he said, fuck it, just pardon everybody. I don't care. Whatever happened, happened. Fuck it. Why? What did Biden do? Oh, yeah, he gave everybody a blanket fucking pardon that could have even been looked at from his administration. He gave everybody a blanket fucking pardon all the way back to 2014. Why 2014? What happened in 2014? Oh, I'm sorry. Wasn't that the Burisma shit and all the scandal that came from that you're not getting $1 billion kind of thing? And then Trump said, hey, what the fuck is this? And then all of a sudden impeachment because he's trying to bribe Ukraine. Y'all remember that?
Individuals who are serving incredibly lengthy sentences under outdated mandatory minimum sentencing laws, who are seeking reductions of their sentence, people who have demonstrated rehabilitation over the course of decades in prison. There are people whose family members are writing in pleading for their return home. There are individuals who are in the community doing incredibly well, who have demonstrated.
What about me? Thank you for the $5. I guess, what is that, euros? Oh, no. I'm supposed to be keeping my blood pressure low, bruh. This is the wrong place for that. You know that, man. This is a savage community, all right?
Rehabilitation and given back over the course of years, who are asking for pardons. And all of those people are on hold because no interaction was happening as of the time of my departure between the Office of the Pardon Attorney and the White House about clemency. The only people being considered for clemency were people who had some sort of inside access, inside track to the White House and could get their cases in front of the president without going through the ordinary process. And that is very concerning, and it causes real reason to lose confidence in the clemency process and real damage to our system of justice.
Have you followed what has happened to those who were given pardons by President Trump who were engaged in assaulting law enforcement here on Capitol Hill? Have you followed any of the cases?
What about the people whose charges were dismissed and even got payouts by DC Capitol Police while they were burning the fucking DC area down for over a month? Halfway through that, they even attacked the White House, burnt the fucking cathedral right next door. He gassed the peaceful protesters to take a picture of him with a Bible upside down in front of a church that they burnt. Y'all remember that story? Yeah, they attacked the White House. What happened to them? All charges dropped. Why? Well, everybody was wearing a mask. You can't tell me that individual, even though there's tattoos and everything, and the skinny frame, the hairstyle, everything else is perfectly in line with this person, but because you can't see their face, you don't know 100% it's them. So all charges dismissed, and the ones that got arrested, well, they got to pay out for it. But yeah, let's talk about the pardons from the January 6 people who beat Capitol Police. What about that? How do you feel about that? Honestly, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. That whole month of rioting in DC in 2020 did more damage and hurt more officers than January 6th. But more people went to jail for January 6th than that whole month of rioting in DC. So what the fuck are you talking about? I don't give a shit if they get pardoned. If that's the game you want to play, that's the game we're going to play. You let those people off the fucking hook. They didn't even stand fucking trial. These people did. We saw that 100% throughout the fucking release of everything that it does seem like the federal government set that shit the fuck up. for people to be prosecuted and go to jail, just like the Gretchen Whitmer shit, you know, where 2/3 of all those motherfuckers that were involved in that case were fed or fed informants. And only 2 of them got the shit into the stick because they got a mistrial, but in their new trial couldn't bring up the fact that the federal government was involved at all. That's what the fuck we're talking about here. That's the Justice Department. That's the weaponization that they want to keep just because they have the ability to wield that weaponization in that way, even still today.
What has happened to them since?
I have, sir.
And what have you seen?
Well, there seems to be chaos in litigation that's happening around the country about determining what the intended scope of the pardons was. That's one thing I've observed, and that's one way that you can tell that my office was not involved. Had we been involved, we would have written the paperwork in an intelligible, clear way, so there was no ambiguity about what it meant. But instead, there is litigation happening around the country in which the department is taking inconsistent positions and reversing itself about what those pardons mean. They have created a lot of chaos in a lot of different ways, and that is not the way the process is intended to work.
At least one of these people has been shot dead assaulting a police officer. Are you aware of that?
I don't want to overstep the area of my knowledge. I've seen things in the news, but I don't have any personal knowledge about the facts of that case or others.
Mr. Chairman, let me conclude by saying that last week our New Jersey colleague showed strength, resolve, and courage to stand for more than 25 hours
and some girl over
to
here.
speak for fairness and justice.
Dems.
He made history. This hearing continues in that spirit. Thank you all for your courage in attending.
I'd like to recognize Mr. Nadler from New York for his questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this important hearing, shining a light on the most
Y'all ready
flawless
for this,
administration in history. Donald Trump may pride himself on mastering the art of the deal. What he has really perfected is the art of the shakedown. Look no further than the corrupt quid pro quo with the mayor of my own city of New York, Eric Adams. After cozying up to Donald Trump, the charges against him were dismissed without prejudice. Was it because the prosecutors determined there wasn't sufficient evidence to bring him to trial? No, it was because Donald Trump wanted something from him. He wanted the mayor to help carry out his extreme immigration agenda against the wishes and the well-being of millions of New Yorkers. So he and his administration orchestrated a corrupt bargain to drop the charges in exchange for the mayor doing his dirty work, and by dismissing the charges without prejudice, meaning they could be reinstated at any time, effectively kept the mayor on the hook to assure he did whatever Trump wanted. And of course, there is the president's effort to bully and intimidate major law firms that employ lawyers who dared to try to hold him accountable when they served in government. His campaign of retribution is a classic case of extortion, threatening the livelihood of these firms unless they do his bidding. If it weren't for the Supreme Court's immunity ruling last year, Trump could be prosecuted for extortion, violation of the Hobbs Act. Of course, Trump's captive DOJ would not prosecute in any event. Mr. Crosswell, thank you for being here. In your testimony, you told us about the reasons why you resigned. Perhaps you can elaborate. I know you did not work directly on the case, but how would you characterize the evidence you have seen publicly reported against Mayor Adams? Was it substantial? Was it overwhelming? What were some of the most egregious examples of public corruption you saw in this matter, particularly as it related to the mayor?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. You know, the case had not been dismissed with prejudice by Judge Ho last week. Mayor Adams would have had his trial, and like any other citizen, he'd be presumed innocent until proven guilty. That said, it was obviously deeply concerning that this was being dismissed for reasons that had nothing to do with the evidence. And so in terms of my own resignation, that was concerning. I probably would still be a public integrity had it not been for the fact that then five of my colleagues, incredibly talented, dedicated, and friends of mine with deep integrity then also had to resign because they wouldn't sign the order. And that really kind of goes back to my experience as a Marine officer. You take care of the people that work for you and you expect them to do the right thing. You don't force them to resign over it.
But based on public reports, you don't want to characterize the strength of the evidence at this point in that case?
Sorry.
I said, based on public reports, you don't want to characterize the strength of the evidence in the case?
If Congressman, if everything that was alleged in the indictment would have been able to be proven by the prosecutors, that looked like it would be a strong case.
Thank you, Mr. Croswell. Ms. Cohen, thank you for being here and sharing your story with us. I know you mentioned why you left Skadden Arps in your testimony. Can you tell us more about why you think the law firm gave in to the president's demands, how intense the pressure is coming from the administration, and how dangerous that type of pressure is to the rule of law in this country?
Absolutely, thank you. I think that the strength of the pressure is exponentially higher because law firms are not standing together and are instead treating the president's attacks as if they are normal course and not something that would easily be challenged in a court. And so I think that the pressure here comes from presuming that standing up to the president means you fall out of his favor. I think that ultimately, because these executive orders have pointed to past representation, particularly challenging the government, it's massively dissuading large corporate law firms from taking cases that might be viewed as problematic to the Trump administration. They were instrumental in 2016 in bringing challenges against unconstitutional action, but it's not limited to 2016. Large corporate law firms provide a significant amount of financial and staffing resources to public interest organizations that are challenging unconstitutional actions under both Democratic and Republican presidents. They also provide an immense amount of direct services work, like to migrants seeking asylum and to veterans seeking benefits, things that the president alleges may be frivolous or counter to his interests.
Thank you. And if lawyers are too intimidated to take on the administration when it clearly violates the law, then what remedy do any of us have to enforce the law and protect our rights from a president with dictatorial demands?
Given the nature of our adversarial system, we have almost no hope. That's why we have to act now.
But you use this, the same tactic you used against him, and it didn't fucking work. And now you're scared that he's gonna do it back to you. Because just like I asked Rob that one time, I was like, hey, what keeps the judges in check? I mean, you really can't do anything about it to a judge until after a ruling is made, and that's only overturning. So what keeps them in check? Because at time and time again, it's just like, hey, this could be a mistrial thing because even the judge interfered in the case. The judge was directing the case and some of these kinds of things. And they're just like, no, I'm just going to go ahead and dismiss this because hey, we're not going to go for a mistrial just because I'm incompetent. Like, what the fuck? Are you really trying to make that argument in my courtroom? Who keeps them in check? Because honestly, unless they're caught doing something after the fact, there's nothing you can do to, unless they're blatant and outright, there's nothing you can do to curb what they've done until after it's done.
And thank you. I think we've got to shift back to the Senate side now because we're impinging on their time. So,
thank you, Mr. Nadler. And I regret to announce that the Chief Justice, during the course of the hearing, Chief Justice Roberts, has indefinitely blocked the court order requiring the return of Kilmore Abrego Garcia. This ruling came out during the course of this hearing. So we now have the deportation of someone in violation of court order, and a further court ordering his return has now been countermanded by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Senator Whitehouse, you are recognized.
If you read
this is going to hurt me.
Appellate court decision regarding the stay, one of the things I think you'll note is the power of the language that was used by those judges. So disappointed, I guess, yet again in Chief Justice Roberts' decision. I think we often read decisions which say the decision was misguided, the decision was erroneous, the decision was clearly erroneous, the decision was wrong, the decision stood on inadequate facts. In this case, the appellate court said the decision was unconscionable. You don't see that very much. So my questions will be to you, Mr. Crosswell. I think you're the most experienced criminal prosecutor in the panel. And one of the things that we've seen has been the Trump MAGA crowd parroting the notion that there was weaponization of the Department of Justice against Mr. Trump, which is obviously a narrative that you would like to deploy if your leader is in fact a criminal, was convicted in certain places, was indicted in others.
I mean, let's not talk about how corrupt any of that shit really was, right? Let's not talk about how Letitia James went after Trump for the same damn thing she's wrapped up in now, huh? Including some of those documents putting her actual father as her husband to get these loans. Now, Trump didn't do that, but that's a little bit questionable, is it not? Because shouldn't that be looked upon with the utmost scrutiny as far as that goes? So you can't label your father your husband in order to get loans? A little fucking weird, isn't it, Letitia James?
And had the prosecutive team say, hey, we had a good case here when it was closed down. So faced with all that evidence, obviously the thing you want to say is weaponization, fake news, all the usual denials. So I'm going to take a minute and compare what happened in a recent case, the one that was referred to about the unlawful effort to try to seize climate funds. And because the veto period had passed by about 2 years, to cook up analysis that would have allowed them to seize the funds had to cook up a crime that would give them the ability to say, well, you know, while we're investigating this crime, we need to seize the funds. So that's the backdrop. And in the course of that, the first thing that happened is that the political appointee was told by his career staff.
Yes, because while we're really looking in to see if anything happens here on a federal level, let's let them continue to do their possibly criminal activity while we investigate whether they're doing criminal activity. White House, you are a special kind of retarded. In this look, literally, there's no intimidation factor at all here. I know that's where you're trying to go with it. It makes you look dumb as fuck that you do this. Put your glasses on to read, take them off to fucking look at somebody, because this is a pathetic look from you. That lisp does not help at all. And you're racist as shit, dude. Let's not just cut to the chase. You are racist as shit.
That there was no evidence of any crime and they couldn't proceed. Do you recall any time in any of the Trump federal cases where a political appointee was told by the career staff that they had no case?
Senator, I've been doing the job for 10 years, and I can tell you that I have never, ever seen anyone, myself or anyone else, be directed to prosecute or drop a case based on politics.
Yeah.
It just does not. It does not.
And in this case, the woman who was at the head of the office who told the political appointee that he had no case was forced to resign as her penalty for not going forward. Nothing like that ever happened in any of the Trump investigations that I can recall. Do you have any recollection of any career folks being fired for refusing to go forward with a case that had no merit?
Senator, my supervisors have always expected me to do the right thing. I think something that people need to.
Did this motherfucker say that some of the Trump cases had no goddamn merit? Did he just fucking... I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to say that, you know, did any of these cases go forward because they had no merit, or This Weasley little fucker.
Politics.
Yeah.
It just does not. It does not.
And in this
figure
case, the woman who was at the head of the office who told the political appointee that he had no case was forced to resign as her penalty for not going forward. Nothing like that ever happened in any of the Trump investigations that I can recall. Do you have any recollection of?
So a woman was fired because she wanted to continue with the charges that were political in nature, and everybody can see that. None of that happened under the Trump administration, you know, when they were investigating the Trump administration, right? Why the fuck would he? Why would you hire your own? Why would you fire your own people you hired to be your sniffing dogs? What the fuck? Why would you even ask that kind of question? That's so goddamn retarded. Hey, we didn't fire our own people, did we? No, but he's firing them. Yeah, you see how corrupt that is? What the fuck is this? What are you even talking about, White House? This is dumb.
Of any career folks being fired for refusing to go forward with a case that had no merit?
Senator, my supervisors have always expected me to do the right thing. I think something that people need to understand about prosecutors is we're unique in the sense that our job is not to win our case, it's to do justice. And so every supervisor I've ever had would demand nothing less than me to do the right thing for justice. And if that means dismissing a case, that's what you would do. And then let me just go forward a little bit more, because after that, what happened is that the political appointee went forward with a pleading that no career attorney would sign. The only signature on it was the political appointee. Did you recall that ever happening in any of the Trump cases? In my personal experience, I've never had a situation where I was asked to do something that
our lackeys didn't fuck up and step out of line, so we didn't fire them. So there's a new administration that's trying to get our people out of there, and now they're bucking up and stepping out of line. None of this happened while we were investigating Trump, right? Because we wanted them to be as corrupt as possible. None of that happened. How are you even trying to make this a thing, White House? There's no way that any normal, average, everyday American who even half-ass understands would look at you and be like, yeah, that makes complete fucking sense. Our lackeys, the people that went after Trump in the first place, we didn't fire them because they went after Trump. But now Trump's in and he's firing the people that went after him in a corrupt-ass fucking way. That's corruption, right, though? That's pro-crime, pro-corruption agenda. But because we didn't fire him, it looks good on us because we didn't fire them for going after him in a corrupt way to make sure he can never be president again. White House, you're retarded. And the people voting for you are retarded. Because if that's the messaging that they understand, and that's the messaging they like, you're in for a rude fucking awakening, which is actually happening in your area, isn't it? I gotta check that out. Hold up.
Well, except for the Eric Adams case, that was the first time I was asked to sign something that
Unusual to go forward with a pleading where no career attorney will sign for the Department of Justice, correct? Only with a political appointee signature.
Yes, Senator.
Yes, it is. And then in the Trump cases, I don't recall anyone ever getting shot down, any of the prosecutive team, when they went for an order.
Rhode Island.
And in this case, when the political
you're
appointee
from
went
Rhode
for
Island. Never
the
mind.
order and went to the magistrate judge, he got shut down. When I was a U.S. attorney, if we got shot down for an order by one of our district judges,
wrong area. I thought you were in the wrong
stop,
or a different state.
figure out what went wrong. This is a never event. let's figure this out so it doesn't happen. Do you recall that any of the Trump orders were ever shot down by a judge, or every time that prosecution team went to a court for an order, they were successful?
Senator, not sure about which order. I would say that it would be if I went to a court and was shot down for probable cause, that's happened, but you try to avoid that.
Yeah, you try very hard to avoid it. And after that's happened, do you ever go to another district to try to shop the same case where the judge had found that there was no basis to proceed?
It's never come up in my career, Senator. If I did, I would certainly tell the next judge that the last one found no probable cause, and that probably would not bode well.
And then I don't believe in the Trump cases any prosecutor ever made public statements outside of the pleadings about the culpability or wrong of the subject of the investigation. And yet in this case, both the political appointee and the agency chief who was engaged made public derogatory comments,
because they have
false
some
allegations, it seems, of
they
fraud,
set up for this.
defamatory per se. What are the concerns of the Department of Justice when political appointees make statements about the potential guilt or culpability of an uncharged person?
Senators, you're aware we conduct grand jury investigations in secret for a reason, because if we can't substantiate the case against someone, we close it without the public ever knowing, and that's to protect the American people.
And in this matter, the last thing that happened was that the agency had been going forward with its own case under the president's executive order, shifted to the fraud argument to try to improve its argument before the federal judge, not a magistrate judge, the U.S. District Court judge. And the U.S. District Court judge said, guys, there's no evidence here. You've shown me no evidence to support this claim that there's fraud or misconduct here, and yet they continue. And I can pretty well bet that in none of the so-called weaponized Trump cases was there a moment when a federal judge said there is no evidence here, and yet the department continued it. So I guess the conclusion I draw from this is that there is fake weaponization, which is what you say when you're following somebody who has serious criminal liability, has been indicted, has been convicted, and you want to make all that go away with a narrative about, oh, that's just weaponization. And then you put your people in power, and what happens? The actual weaponization begins. And this counts, by my count, 7 red flags, any one of it which would have called a check to a case in the normal Department of Justice. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. Recognizing Congressman Hank Johnson of the 4th District of Georgia and the ranking member of our subcommittee on courts, IP, and artificial intelligence.
This motherfucker is on the Artificial Intelligence Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, has Guam tipped over yet? I need to know these things because he seemed to think that if you put 12,000 troops on one side of the island of Guam, that it would capsize like a boat. Everything would flip. Is that a good idea? Yeah, that was that guy.
Thank you, Mr. Ranking Member and Mr. Ranking Member for holding this hearing. You know, after losing the 2020 election,
it could be
the
some
lame
girl.
duck
There's a lot of
President
these
Donald
coming up
Trump
now.
embarked upon an illicit and multi-pronged scheme to remain in office beyond his term.
But hold on, before we begin a little bit, I do want to show you guys something. They're starting to do their own bicameral spotlight, a continued pattern of government surveillance against U.S. citizens. That's probably going to be one of their own. Notice the change in the thumbnail on that one. And this one's just Dems. I saw this one pop up and I was like, what the fuck what is this? Ending lawfare against whistleblowers who protect children. There's a few of them that are starting to pop up in every different place too, where the Dems are just having their own hearings like this. And this page is the only one you're going to see it. You won't find it on the GOP one for the judiciary. You're not going to find it on there. But then again, there are someone on the GOP one that you don't find on. This is the Dem run one, Democrats Judiciary House. This one's being botted to hell and back, I can tell you that. But
just go without
shit, that's the Rules Committee.
This plan culminated in the January 6, 2021 insurrection, which failed. But Donald Trump wasn't finished. Over the next 4 years, he hatched a plan to create the conditions where, if he won the presidency again, he would never have to leave office. And during that planning process, Trump was given an assist when the Supreme Court of the United States, which he magnified with 3 appointees, ran the clock out on efforts to prosecute him while giving him immunity from prosecution for official acts while in office. Once back in the White House and with immunity so that he was above the law, Trump's first order of business was to destroy the rule of law so that he could then systematically dismantle our democracy. And there would be no checks on his illegal behavior. In less than 100 days, he has turned the Department of Justice
floating bridge
into
over
the
there for
Department of
Israel.
Injustice. He effected
Too
this
soon?
transformation by installing sycophantic loyalists and purging career employees whose only offense was adherence to the rule of law. Good people like our witnesses here. But even purging career employees is not enough for a tyrant. A tyrannical leader like Trump must also intimidate people to ensure their silence. And that's why Trump's DOJ directed armed U.S. Marshals to deliver a letter to Miss Oyer at her home
God damn,
about
dude, how
testifying
fucking blind are
to
you?
Congress.
You are flipping
And
up way too many
it's why
times.
the administration is now claiming that she is muzzled by executive privilege, which is a baseless claim. And going after government lawyers is not enough for
How
this
big is that
aspiring
print?
dictator. Trump is also attacking lawyers in the private sector in an attempt to decimate our system of adversarial justice, which is crucial to a functioning legal system. Any law firms that employed lawyers who previously investigated Trump, challenged his administration, or worked on causes he didn't like were slapped with executive orders. And these executive orders threatened to strip law firms of security clearances, terminate government contracts with the firm, or deprive them of business in any way that they can, even preventing their employees from entering government buildings. The idea is to scare lawyers enough so that no one brings cases against Trump or his administration's illegal actions. And even though Trump thinks he has the Supreme Court in his pocket, he cannot risk cases working their way through the legal system and finding out that even for the justices he appointed, it might be a bridge too far in destroying our democracy. So far, Trump has issued 5 executive orders targeting top powerful and wealthy law firms to send a message to the less powerful and wealthy that if you challenge his illegal actions, they'll be held to play. Several of his targeted law firms have folded like cheap lawn chairs, while others have stood and fought back. Trump wants to scare the legal profession into silence, and we're honored today to have these brave and patriotic lawyers with us who refuse to be silenced. Mr. Crosswell, you know, you found yourself at a crossroads after Donald Trump returned to office and acting Deputy Attorney General Bove ordered you and your...
I'm sorry, guys. I can't stand this asshole like that, but check this out. We were bringing about this. We were talking about this before. Y'all remember this shit?
With Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff is our shadow attorney general, arguing against replacing our independent prosecutors with Trump loyalists. If Trump seeks to eliminate the Department of Education, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, a former Teacher of the Year, could step up as shadow education secretary to loudly defend public education in the United States. If Trump orders Marco Rubio to hand Ukraine and much of Eastern Europe to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Congressman Greg Meeks, as Shadow Secretary of State, could be a strong voice in support of maintaining international relationships and protecting democracy at home and abroad. Senator Michael Bennet as Shadow Treasury Secretary, and Congresswoman Susan DelBene as Shadow Commerce Secretary could help ensure the middle class and small businesses have a voice in government and call out Trump's proposed tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. As Shadow Defense Secretary, Congressman Adam Smith, a great representative for the people of Washington and not a Fox News host, could counter Trump's threat to use military force against his political opponents and work to ensure that the Department of Defense stays loyal to the Constitution and not some wannabe dictator. And Senator Tammy Duckworth could argue against cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs that would delay the benefits and care our service members have so rightly earned. If Trump hands over the EPA to big oil ally Lee Zeldin, we could see Congresswoman Kathy Castor pushing back for environmental protection and conservation to protect the air we breathe and the water we drink. And if Trump pushes to ban abortion nationwide, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro could step in as Shadow Secretary of Health and Human Services to defend women's right to choose and argue against the gutting of Medicare by Trump and his cronies. Mr. Speaker, new times require new solutions. The Shadow Cabinet isn't just about opposing extreme MAGA attacks on our government. It's also about making clear what we stand for, not just what we're against.
Y'all remember that shit? We brought it up before. Look. People are already starting to make that connection with it. We bring this one. We got Derek Evans over here saying congressional Democrats just had their first shadow government hearing. We brought together both chambers of Congress to conduct real oversight to serve as check and balance to hold those who issue power to account to carry out a constitutional duty. People are already seeing it. Holy shit. Good job, guys. Good fucking job.
Colleagues at the Public Integrity Section to sign a motion to dismiss the indictment against New York City Mayor Adams. Is it true that Mr. Bove told you and your colleagues that whoever complied would be rewarded with a position of leadership within the department and that whoever pushed back would face professional consequences?
If I could interrupt for 1 second, the witness can answer the question. We're being reminded that we have just 5 minutes each. I think a lot of us on the House side were under the impression that people spoke for 15 minutes here, but it is a 5-minute rule. We're going to comply with. Yeah.
Well, I've only gone for 5 minutes and 13 seconds. But if you would answer that question, I'll gladly yield back my time.
Congressman, my best recollection of the conversation that what was said to us was in my resignation letter, and I think it was very, very much implied, if not stated, that
I don't know who woke his ass up.
Promotion
Somebody needs to put his
opportunities
ass
for
back
anyone
in
that
bed.
would sign the motion, and I also think it's very fair to say there was an implicit threat for those that won, and that was done through reference to what took place in the Southern District of New York. That's my best recollection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Klobuchar.
Yes, thank you, Senator Schiff. And I just want to correct the record, Representative Raskin. We don't speak for 15 minutes. We speak for 25 hours here in the United States Senate. So thank you both for holding this hearing. And thank you also for shining light on the simple.
What the fuck was Cory Booker filibustering for? Like, he sat there and spoke for 24 hours. You know this motherfucker pissed and shit himself. And then he cried because he broke a record and everybody was praising him. But what was he doing that for? Was it just him doing it? I don't understand. I don't understand what that was about. But yeah, we got Amy Klobuchar here. This is going to be even more retarded. Okay, not as retarded as Hank Johnson retarded, but this is the pure depths of stupidity at this point. Oh, Blumenthal is here too. God damn it.
Idea that the president is not king. We are not a kingdom. And it is many of our colleagues, sadly, on the Republican side of the aisle are acting like subjects to the king instead of being independently elected officials, to the point where we're holding this shadow hearing because they won't hold such a hearing. So I'll start with you, Mr. Crosswell. And I, as a former prosecutor, I was so in awe of what you and others.
You're holding this. There you go. Confirmation. You're holding this shadow hearing. It's all Democrats just because they won't have this hearing. That's all made up bullshit. And for you to justify perverting the rule of law? Are you fucking kidding me? What is this retarded shit, though?
Did after you were forced to drop bribery or asked to drop bribery charges against Mayor Adams and wouldn't do it. The words of the lead prosecutor on the case, Hagan Skoten, forever I will remember. He said, "I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me." And I'm sure you felt the same way. Could you talk about why you made this decision?
Thank you, Senator. Senator, as I think I mentioned earlier, I would probably still be at public integrity. As deeply concerning as what happened with Eric Adams was for me, the straw that
tastes like Smilesberries
was what happened to my colleagues. These were individuals I cared about, and they had to resign because they weren't going to sign a motion that should not have been signed. And for me, and I think also just the fact that then we were ordered to do the same thing, for me, it almost felt like an abuse of power against me, myself. And so I didn't have a job lined up or insurance lined up, but I'd rather be unemployed and not be insured than work for someone that would do something like that to my colleagues.
A non-existent shadow committee thing.
Okay, thank you.
Huh?
Ms.
Oh,
Young,
you're talking about how they didn't put it on C-SPAN.
How does firing career prosecutors or trying to make them to do something that they consider illegal, how does that weaken public safety, send the wrong message to law enforcement in general? Of course, this includes people who just happened to work on the January 6th cases, who were just called in to play various roles in it. Might have been someone who'd been in the office for a year or someone who'd been there longer. Just talk generally about how it weakens the rule of law and law enforcement.
Sure. Prosecutors at the Justice Department are some of the best lawyers in the country. So when you fire them, you
it kind of does look like Milhouse's mom, though.
Make
not gonna lie.
American communities more vulnerable. When you fire national security lawyers, you make our nation's security less tight. These terminations are due to career employees doing their jobs, accepting cases that they were assigned, not prosecuting.
Ma'am, how are these same judges getting these same cases? How did Beryl Howell get most of the January 6th cases? Or was it Beryl Howell that was? One of those judges, how did they get most of them? Because they were the most strict on them. How the fuck does the same people that, what was it? That had the same people that had the, God damn it, what was it? Oh, the defamation case against Fox News wind up with the Ray Epps case. The same fucking court. How the fuck did that happen? How the fuck is with all these little Trump cases and everything like that? How the fuck does it happen to be the same judge over and over and over and over and over again? How did Judge Kaplan wind up with both E. Jean Carroll cases? Oh, just the luck of the draw?
These cases would be insubordination. It's antithetical to the nature of career service. And people are resigning preemptively. And it's also going to prevent
They're not
really
on public
great
TV. They're on
lawyers
YouTube.
from wanting to go to the Justice Department. And lots of really great lawyers have always wanted to go to the Justice Department. So the more of these terminations we see, the more intimidation we see, the less safe we're going to be, and the less strong and seasoned and a DOJ will be. And without a strong, robust DOJ, the rule of law will suffer.
Exactly. Quickly, Ms. Oyer, Justice Department's taken oath to the Constitution. Could you, in 30 seconds, the difference between representing the people of the U.S. and representing the President? As we know, the line has been completely crossed here, as you know, from your own experience.
It's very concerning that the department is currently being run by people, all of whom represented the president personally. There are certain decision-making authorities of the department that have been delegated to people who personally represent the president, including oversight of matters of ethics and professional responsibility.
I'll chill out eventually.
That's evidenced in the letter that was sent to me, which was sent to me by someone who was one of President Trump's personal defense attorneys. This is a way of stripping away any of the safeguards against the tremendous powers of the Department of Justice. The administration is currently attacking the safeguards within the department, as well as the safeguards external to the department, like the defense bar, that play a vital role in pushing
Which Ms.
back.
Cohen is well aware of. Yes.
Yeah.
By trying to get activists and fucked up people like these people sitting here at the bench, by trying to get them out because they cannot rule in an unbiased way.
So it's sort of a multi-pronged attack on the rule of law, and that has real consequences for real people, including things like individuals being deported mistakenly or individuals being
can we talk
swept
about
up
how
in
Jennifer
immigration
Milley
raids
said
who
he
happen
would
to
commit
actually
treason?
be U.S. citizens. It's very,
Can we talk
very
about that?
concerning.
Thank you.
I recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Mary Gay Scanlon, who is the ranking member on the Constitution Subcommittee.
Thank you for convening us today, and thank you so much to our witnesses. I really am in awe
Reverend Kane, ladies and gentlemen.
your courage and your dedication to the rule of law, which is what makes our country great. And we all really, really appreciate your willingness to stand up and be counted when it really counts.
I'm sorry,
Over
I
the
should have
past few
done the
weeks,
House
the White
rules
House
one.
has unleashed an unprecedented attack upon lawyers and judges who serve our American justice system, with the White House attempting to suppress challenges to the lawless orders that it is issuing. They're threatening and intimidating some of the country's most accomplished lawyers, some of whom are with us here today. Congress under Republican leadership has thus far acquiesced to this lawless behavior. The courts and lawyers are acting as the primary defense against executive action, and doing so successfully in the vast majority of almost 200 cases brought so far. I want to focus on the orders and sanctions issued against private law firms, because that's the world I came out of. These law firms have been selected because of their relationship to attorneys who represented the president's political opponents, opposed his administration's actions, or aided efforts to hold him accountable. These firms and lawyers targeted by the administration have been the standard bearers for the highest ethical obligation of their profession to provide free legal services in the public interest, or pro bono publico. They've been willing and able to dedicate top legal talent to undertake the costly and time-consuming work of ensuring due process in difficult cases, reforming broken systems, and vindicating human and civil rights of those subject to our laws. This administration's attempt to sideline these efforts stands in stark contrast to prior administrations, which understood that our justice system only works when everyone has access to representation. And I'm thinking about 1963.
No, Rhonda. You remember when they were talking about having a shadow government? That was about a year ago or so. These are a shadow hearing of that shadow government. These are all Democrats just sitting there trying to paint a narrative.
President Kennedy's call to action to the most prominent law firms in our country, asking them to marshal the resources of the private bar to protect Americans' civil rights. The Trump administration has chosen instead to undertake a grotesque attack on the fundamental right of access to justice. So while the action of targeting private law firms are designed to hurt those most at risk, those who can't afford a lawyer, and specifically those with the guts to stand up to this administration's blatant violations of the Constitution, due process, and civil and human rights. Now, we've seen the administration's campaign begin to achieve its purpose, intimidating lawyers who might represent those challenging its actions. Some law firms targeted by the White House have settled with the White House. Others that have regularly participated in this kind of class action and other work in the past are declining to do so. This administration is employing the tactics used by authoritarian regimes to crack down on those who defend the rule of law. Places like lawyers, universities, civil society, and the independent media. So now is the time when all lawyers, law firms, judges, law schools, bar associations, and elected officials of every and no party have to stand up and condemn this attack. Because democracy doesn't only die in darkness, it also dies with silence or acquiescence. So I am encouraged by the growing resistance to these actions. And Ms. Cohen, whether willingly or not, you have ended up being a face of that. I understand that you participated in leading a letter that over 1,800 junior lawyers at these prestigious law firms have joined. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thanks so much. As I stated in my opening testimony, it was not my first choice to resign. I adore my coworkers. I did really meaningful work, both billable and pro bono. And I also expected that firm leadership would do the right thing, not just at my own law firm, but across the industry. And so something that was frankly quite scary was that all of the conversations about what the executive orders were aimed at doing and were doing, everyone agreed across political stripes, across level of seniority, that the president was targeting private law firms in an attempt to scare lawyers broadly. But no one was willing to say anything. And so I worked with a group of a variety of other associates to put together a way that people could anonymously express their concerns about this. We modeled it off a statement that was put out by the American Bar Association, a nonpartisan association, prior to even the Perkins executive order coming out in the first place about these troubling rule of law attacks. And so that was just one of many steps that we took to not reach this point, in the hopes that firms would come together and do the right thing.
I do think it's really important that lawyers and law firms stand together. I mean, after all, it is through having a rules-based order that many of these law firms have been able to be so successful, and the erosion here affects everybody. So thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. And now it gives me pleasure to introduce Ryan. You'll be happy to know another former Marine, but also someone, Ms. Young, who has been leading our inquiry into what the law firms are doing, is Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no such thing as a former Marine, as we know. Semper Fidelis. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and to both of you, Senator Schiff and Mr. Raskin. Thank you, Congressman Raskin, for joining me in seeking to shine light, and for your support, Senator Schiff, because America needs to be aware, needs to be afraid of what is happening here, and needs to know that there are people like you who took the risk and made the sacrifice that others far wealthier, more resourced, and more powerful were unwilling to take, members of our profession who declined to stand up and speak out. But here's the good news for America. There are lawyers willing to take on this fight against a bully. 504 signed an amicus brief. Others are representing the firms. Let's say their names: Covington and Burling, Perkins Coie, Jenner and Block, Wilmer Hale, who are trying to break this pattern. And it is a pattern. Donald Trump hammers, bullies, intimidates, and then offers to negotiate. He's doing it with law firms. He's done it with universities. He's doing it with countries and companies through tariffs. It is part of a slide.
Sex crazed
toward
Arono's here.
tyranny. Tim Snyder, my friend, a professor at Yale, has said the first rule of tyranny from the 20th century, the first lesson is do not obey in advance. That is what
Missing mayhem on my
Skadden, Arps,
commie.
Milbank, and Wilkie Farr have done. They didn't even wait for the executive order. They obeyed in advance. And I just want to make really clear what is most offensive to me.
Is the fact that you exist.
They acceded, in effect, to allow Donald Trump to tell them who their clients would be and who they would hire. I've been United States Attorney.
You took away law licenses for anybody that was representing Trump in any one of his cases. You tried to jail people for giving him legal advice on how to challenge an election. What the fuck are you talking about, Blumenthal?
In Connecticut, I was Attorney General for 20 years, but I've also been in private practice. And if there's one thing that matters to me as a trial lawyer, and I still consider myself proudly a trial lawyer, it is nobody tells me
What is a
what to
trial
do.
lawyer?
And when I represent a
What's
client,
a trial lawyer?
it is 100%. And when I take on a client against a big corporation and then some other big corporation or that corporation offers a great representation to me, I say, sorry, can't do it. I've got the little guy whom I represent, and I'll give up the bonuses and the wealth and the money and the billable hours because I believe in my profession. Donald Trump has boasted, and I'm quoting him, that he has built, quote, an unrivaled network of lawyers. These lawyers are in his pocket. And when they're in his pocket, they cannot represent that little guy. They cannot represent the individuals that Wilkie Farr did, that got them blacklisted. Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, who volunteered as poll workers in Georgia in 2020 to help their fellow citizens vote in the midst of the global pandemic. He is depriving resources of people who really need that representation. And I'll tell you what strikes me as most abhorrent and repugnant, as reported in the New York Times, and Mr. Karp stated it, there were other law firms, and I'm quoting now from the New York Times of March 14th, some of the biggest competitors were calling top lawyers at the beleaguered law firm, one of the nation's most prestigious, asking if they would jump ship along with their lucrative clients. The firms are named Sullivan and Cromwell and Kirkland and Ellis. And Congressman Raskin and I are writing those two firms, along with the others, and asking them what they did to try to lure away those clients and partners, to try to poach their business and their resources. Most abhorrent to me is the potential that they acted in that way. Ms. Cohn, do you know of any specifics about attempts to take away lawyers or clients from either your
I'm going to
firm
be honest
or
with you
others?
guys. I just
that
blanked him
you may
out
have heard?
completely. I was not
Senator
listening.
Blumenthal, I read the same report, and I think it's particularly ironic given that I'm also reading reports that Kirkland and Ellis is now in talks to acquiesce to the Trump administration in advance. So any clients thinking about jumping ship to any other law firm should remember that until they stand together, there's no chance that their new representation will be left alone either. But I will just say, I was a third-year associate when I left, and I wish you had someone more senior here to talk to you about this. But unfortunately, you do not, because the only people in this industry who have been willing to speak on this issue and give up their salaries in order to do so are associates, and I was not close to client work. But thank you for
I
raising.
apologize for going over my time. I'd ask that the Truth Social and
When my wife
the
gets home and gets
New York
settled, I'm going to
Times
have to give it up for the
story that
night
I quoted be entered into the record.
because I got to spend some time with her.
And the distinguished
Just so
lady
we may
from
not
Vermont,
finish this whole
Ms.
thing.
Ballant, is recognized for her questioning.
Thank you
God
to
damn,
the chairs.
Alan?
First of all, I really want to acknowledge at the top the courage that it took for each of you to come here today.
Garcia.
It shows an incredible amount of fortitude. These are incredibly scary times, and it's not easy to stand up and speak out against authoritarians. It's not easy to stand up.
I swear, it's like y'all chose the dumbest of the dumb to be in this committee hearing. Like every single one of these, I really do think are mentally challenged. I'm not gonna lie. Every single one of these Democrats that have been in here, I think are mentally fucking challenged. There could have been better people you could have chosen for this fucking this little shadow government committee thing you got going on. There could have been better people, but look, even I gotta take this down. This is perfect. This is perfect. Even this white-haired woman over here, the look on her face, she's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, how dumb are you people? This woman is just like, she's fed up with everything. The woman above my head. The woman with the white hair is just like, fucking hell. Did you choose the worst of the worst for this? Because, I mean, other than listening to what the fuck y'all retards are actually drumming up in this country, I don't think we're ever going to hear anything other than crying.
And speak against the president. So all you have to do is look at our Republican colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, who are remaining silent. So the fact that you're willing to be here, to show your face, to speak up for what's right, it matters. And I have to tell you that this is a critical moment right now.
Garcia.
And you are doing the right thing, even though it's frightening, because you're
that
giving
dude's
all
new
of
to the
us
House.
just a little bit of hope in these incredibly dark times. Hope that we're going to be able to turn the tide on this. Hope that more people will see you and stand up to the corruption and the cronyism. And just a little bit of hope that we'll remember that who we are as a people, that we're beholden to the rule of law. And as my colleagues have said, that we are not beholden to a king or a dictator. So know that you are doing the right thing, even though it feels terrifying. Authoritarians like Trump have nothing but contempt for the democratic process and for due process. They mock the principle of accountability because they have none. They portray themselves as victims of so-called lawfare so they can discredit an entire system. That's what this is about. This is about discrediting the system. So we can't believe in lawyers. We can't believe in institutions. And that's terrifying. That is convincing all of us that the rot goes so deeply that the foundation of our very democracy can't be trusted. Ms. Cohen, in your resignation letter, which I have to say was such a shining light, you talk about fear and powerlessness that motivated some of these law firms in the country to cave. And that's what they did. They caved. They are bootlicking. They are bending a knee. Make no mistake, that's what's going on here. How is it that some of the most prestigious and powerful law firms in this country feel that they have to act in this way?
I wish I had a good answer for you, but when I read things like Brad Karp saying that it was an existential crisis for a firm whose profit per equity partner was over $7 million last year, I don't know what to tell you. I apologize.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's not an existential crisis where they're going to lose some money. We're talking about the rule of law.
Hold on. It's not an existential crisis when you lose some money. Then why the fuck are you freaking out about the economy? Because you motherfuckers pumped all your goddamn money into a tanking economy just to sit there and say that our economy is great. No, all this bullshit you guys are feeling about the cost of eggs and everything. No, that's just made up in your head because look at stock prices. Stock go up. Economy do great. And then all of a sudden, Trump gets into office and you're like, oh shit, he's going to fuck economy up so stock don't go up? Let's pull out money. Oh, stock dip. Look, Trump economy bad. It's the same shit. Y'all just literally used your own money, made billions off of, and then pulled the fuck back out to tank the economy back to where it was before you artificially inflated it.
It's disgusting. And the courage that you have
Your
to be here
existence is disgusting.
when so many of your senior colleagues say nothing and grovel to a would-be king speaks volumes about your integrity.
I love this. Because these motherfuckers wouldn't drop the clearly political, clearly biased, and clearly corrupt case against Mayor Adams, who got elected to mayor of New York City because the country of Turkey gave him funds and upgraded flights. Because of that reason, it's important that you stand here in front of America and show your face to show that you wanted the corruption to continue. And now you are in these shadow committees crying about how you were forced out of your job. You lost your job because somebody wanted to end your corruption. I don't know how you feel about that, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm all for that. Stay fucking unemployed. Because it's apparent you can't handle any kind of power unless you wield it for your own agenda instead of what the people want. How about you serve the public and everything will be fine? Instead of your own agenda. And this goes for left and right too. How about you do that shit? Because the American people are getting tired of this dumb shit. And that's left and right. We're all fucking tired of it now. But Jesus Christ, bitch, do you really think this little attitude that you're trying to pull is the best thing that you can actually do right now?
We're in strange times. There were protests across the nation. This weekend, the Chief Justice of the Vermont State Supreme Court, who, trust me, does not usually comment on political matters, he said, quote, "No prior administration has taken such concerted action against the bar. An effort to erode an institutional pillar designed to check abuse of power." When the Chief Justice is finding his voice and speaking publicly, you would think that some law firms could do the same when it's just about the almighty dollar. I want to conclude by saying Trump and all of his enablers, whether they're in Congress or whether they're at these law firms, seem to think that they can outrun this, that somehow we're going to ride this out. We're not going to ride this out. It's not going away. It's only when good people stand up and say, no, I refuse to bow. And my hat is off to all of you. You are showing courage that so many people in this moment are not. And I'm going to be able to go home this weekend, the end of this week, and talk to my two kids. I got 2 high school students, and they're going to want to know that there are good people doing the right thing, and I'll be able to tell them about this. I yield back.
Bitch, the only thing you have actually done in this hearing was make them public. Nobody would have actually cared. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Nobody would have cared about these fucking people. Oh, they didn't want to drop corrupt ass charges, and oh, because they didn't want to do that, now they lose a job. Nobody would have given a fuck about these people. And now you've put them front and center stage to sit there and cry about how your weaponization against a black man that jumped off the Democratic Party fucking line about immigration is somehow what? Mayor Adams playing along with the Trump administration to remove the illegals that he said were destroying the city that you tried to imprison him for? And these are the people that didn't want to drop the charges that we all knew were corrupt in the first goddamn place. That's all you did was put them front and stage for that. And you think they should They should be held to the highest of praise and admiration. Why? Because they wanted to corruptly imprison a man because he went against your narrative and embarrassed the Democrat Party, who told us for years that the border was under control and that the crisis was a right-wing conspiracy theory. You went after him for breaking that fucking delusion. All you did was put them front and center stage. Nobody would have given a fuck about these people. But now we gotta.
Senator Hirono from the great state of Hawaii.
Oh.
Thank you very much, and I thank all of you
Sex
for
phrase
being
Hirono.
here. And obviously, there were a lot of people here who really care about adherence to the rule of law, and I'm glad that I was able to make it for this portion. So I thank Congressman Raskin and Senator
Oh, that beer's
Schiff.
almost hot now.
So
I tried to nurse
these
it.
are not normal times. We have a president who doesn't think that the rule of law applies to him, aided and abetted by a Supreme Court in their immunity decision. So what we have is a president who will go after anybody, including countries, corporations, law firms, anybody who
Tim, are
he
you on
thinks can
Xanax or
stand up
something?
to
Why the
him.
fuck are your words
that
slurring like
basically,
this?
he is setting things up so that he can extort from them what he wants. And it is more than sickening to know that the people who are supposed to be standing up for the rule of law, I would say the lawyers, judges in our country, and we see many of them just, I would use the word caving, and that is why caving to the demands of this very corrupt president. So,
What about the lawyers you removed licenses from? What about the lawyers you tried to put away just because they represent Trump? What about the lawyers you attacked because maybe something he might have gotten a win in court? What about all of that shit, Hirono? You want to talk and cry and whine about, he's doing this, he's doing that. What about everything your ass did to him before he took office again? Can we go back to that? Because I guarantee you, if we really look into that, very few of the American population would be okay with any of that shit. I guarantee you, if you took these documents and you took the names out of them and you just replace the names with somebody else, present these court cases to somebody else, just flip the fucking names around, they would scream that is a misjustice. That is an injustice. That is definitely a perversion of law. For any one of these cases, you take these documents, you take these transcripts, you take them all, you flip around the names so nobody knows who the hell these actual court cases are talking about, and I guarantee you, most people will be like, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. And then you say, yeah, well, these were the Trump cases. These were these cases. The ones that you said were all great, high and mighty. These were these cases. Now what are you going to do about it? They're fucked up now, right? Oh, no, wait, they're not fucked up anymore because it's only for Trump. Yeah, see? I guarantee you. Everybody, do that. You want to bring up something? Don't bring up Trump. Don't bring up any of these names that people would know. Bring up some random person's name. Just import some random person's name in these cases and start talking to people about it. And then they'll start being like, yeah, that's kind of fucked. Then be like, oh, well, that was one of the cases against Trump. So is it still fucked now? You'll start seeing a lot of people being like,
Rachel, Ms. Cohen, thank you very much for having the courage and for you to note that, it's too bad that none of the partners who are making millions of dollars at your firm would stand up to do the right thing. It's pretty pathetic. And for the 500 or so law firms that filed an amicus brief on behalf of Perkins Coie, I say aloha to them, because if we don't all stick together, we're all going to be divided and conquered. So thank you very much. And for each of you, some of you who I know
you need
work
to be
for
divided
the DOJ,
and conquered, bitch.
In fact, I think it's Ms. Young. You worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office. You worked for the DOJ. You have a wonderful background. I remember when we had the hearing on Pam Bondi, because she had said at some point that we should go after the prosecute the prosecutors and investigate the investigators. During her confirmation hearing in the Senate, I asked one of the witnesses who came on the second day of her hearings, what would be an indication that she is in fact weaponizing the DOJ to exact retribution, et cetera. And this witness, who happened to be a law professor at Georgetown, my alma mater, and she said, you're going to see people resigning, and that's what's happening, or you're going to see people being fired, and that's what's happening. All is not well in the DOJ. I did want to ask a specific question of Ryan Coswell. When Deputy Attorney General Tom Blanchard came before the Judiciary Committee, I asked him about why he was allowing attrition at a different part of the criminal division, the child exploitation and obscenity section, which fights child sexual exploitation. And he responded by suggesting that only U.S. attorneys' offices really prosecute crime and downplaying the role of criminal division trial attorneys in the DOJ. As someone who worked in both the U.S. Attorney's Office and criminal division, can you explain why having criminal division attorneys in D.C. is important, and what we will lose if we gut the criminal division?
Thank you, Senator.
Please explain why we put a whole bunch of partisan people that are just going to do our bidding right here in Washington because we'll be able to give them, promotions. Please explain why cutting all those people who are just going to do our bidding would hurt crime here in Washington when we have to replace them with people who aren't just cronies and stooges and your loyalists. Weren't you screaming about Trump having loyalists, though? It's a little weird how all that, oh yeah, projection, that's a thing.
What the criminal division litigating sections like public integrity bring is a degree of expertise. Mm-hmm. So certainly there are assistant U.S. attorneys around the country that can handle prosecutions of public corruption. We have a deep bench of very talented lawyers. They're experts in this. They can go all over the nation. And you mentioned that I have been in AUSA in other districts. When I was a prosecutor in San Diego from 2017 to 2020, I was prosecuting many immigration cases. And the entire time you had a public integrity section back in Washington. Hypothetically, if I had a situation where potentially a federal agent was allowing smuggling to happen because that agent was corrupt, I could call that public integrity section and get their help in prosecuting that case. And so if you worry about corruption, if you worry about abuse of power, it's good to have 30 or so attorneys who are able to take those cases on, which also allows the U.S. Attorney's offices to focus on violent crime, immigration crimes, fraud, predation on children.
I'm sorry, I just
that's the value of
minimized OBS accident.
So obviously, but the Justice Department is not particularly interested in preserving the expertise or keeping the expertise in all these areas within the DOJ, and they have their own agenda, which is what I would not call it the people's agenda. Again, for Ms. Young, thank you, for what you are doing. And in fact, when the AG Bondi and interim DC U.S. Attorney Ed Martin referred to DOJ attorneys as the president's lawyers. I think you were asked this question before, but do any of you, but especially for you, Ms. Young, do you consider the attorneys at the DOJ or U.S. Attorney's Office the president's attorneys? And if not, who are they attorneys for?
Sure. DOJ attorneys are absolutely not the president's attorneys. The president is free to hire as many attorneys as he wants. Attorneys at DOJ represent the United States and the American people, and that's it.
To think that we now have a attorney general who says she is the president's attorney, and she's certainly acting in that way. So there you go.
You know what? I think I'm going to change up the thumbnail and title of this.
I would
from
say
both sides here.
an institution, the Justice Department, that is supposed to be prosecuting criminals and doing the things that I know that all of you have been asked. I can't tell what the time is there. What is that?
The time is up.
Okay. Well, that explains it. But we have so many concerns, and again, I thank each of you for resigning, being fired, doing all the things that requires a lot of courage to do. But we just need to continue to fight back. Thank you,
Senator.
I recognize the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Garcia of the Judiciary Committee.
Thank you, Ranking Member Raskin and Senator Schiff, for convening this most timely and important hearing to spotlight Donald Trump's assault on our democracy and legal system, and thanks all the witnesses for standing for justice and democracy as well in your respective positions. As an immigrant and an organizer who hails from Chicago, who's fought for civil rights and against machine politics for decades, I understand that the rule of law has always been a work in progress in our country. Even before Donald Trump entered the political arena, many immigrants and working class people have felt that the law was written and enforced to benefit the wealthy and well-connected at their expense too often. But in the history of this country, the president has ever weaponized the law to this extent. No president has done that before, for his personal benefit and in the service of outright authoritarianism. My colleagues have highlighted many important issues, and I want to focus on the administration's shameful and unlawful treatment of immigrants. There are too many abuses to name in 5 minutes. Trying to end birthright citizenship, which is written into the Constitution, attacking jurisdictions that have welcoming statuses, and which studies show lower crime rates and increased trust within those communities, creating a draconian registration requirement, which goes into effect this week, by the way, on April 11th, detaining Mohammed Khalil and others solely because of their protected speech. And of course, lawlessly invoking the Alien and Enemies Act on false pretenses to detain people and spend taxpayer dollars to send them to a notorious prison in El Salvador. One of those people is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident, father, and a metal worker, whom the administration sent to El Salvador despite Judge Boasberg's ruling and despite a 2019 court order specifically prohibiting him from being removed to that country because of the risk of persecution. Last week, the administration admitted that its removal of Mr. Abrego Garcia was a mistake. At a hearing on Friday, a senior career DOJ official, Erez Raveni, expressed frustration that the Trump administration had taken these actions and produced no evidence that Mr. Abrego Garcia is gang affiliated or that his removal was justified. The judge then ruled that the treatment of Mr. Garcia was shocking and illegal and ordered his return to the U.S. But instead of following the law, Attorney General Bondi suspended Mr. Raveni, and after the Fourth Circuit refused to block the judge's order, the DOJ has now asked the Supreme Court to step in, and it will. A ruling has not been entered yet on the merits of the case. In a sea of authoritarian lawlessness, this case stands out. So I want to ask you, Ms. Young, in your experience and based on public reporting, do you think Mr. Raveni's actions warrant suspension?
Absolutely not. And I know Erez Raveni, he is one of the most zealous advocates in the entire department, but he would never violate his ethical duties, including candor to the court.
What does his suspension tell you about DOJ leadership and its credibility?
It tells me that it values loyalty over the law, and I question DOJ's credibility right now.
And do you believe that what DOJ has done to Mr. Abrego Garcia represents a miscarriage of justice?
I am not going to
I understand. Thank you for that. We're living through one of the most shameful moments in our country's history, and it's incumbent on every one of us to fight back against this lawlessness. Your presence here is an important signal to the rest of the country that we are doing that. Thank you again, Ranking Member Raskin and Senator Schiff, for convening this hearing. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Welch from the great state of Vermont and a great champion of the rule of law.
Thank you. And it's wonderful to see my colleague from Vermont.
Oh my God, what the fuck?
Representative Ballot. Thank you. But it's mostly wonderful to see you here. Yeah, I'm interested in talking to you about why you became attorneys in the culture of law.
Why are your earlobes that
and
gigantic?
What you experienced. I'll start with you, Mr. Crosswell. You know, it's so amazing, the code of kind of, you're a Marine and a lawyer. Duty, honor, loyalty. I mean, just talk about the culture and why a culture is important. Not just personal values of an individual, but an individual is part of a team who's part of a culture that is the responsibility, when you're in that, to reinforce the positive values. Just talk to me a little bit about that, and then how that was challenged with what you faced.
Thank you, Senator. You're right. My first job in public service was as a Marine officer, and you're taught to always take the hard right over the easy wrong. And as an officer, you teach the people that you lead the same thing. That also applies in any law firm office, any prosecutorial office. It's about culture, because when you work for the government, you have an enormous amount of power.
Right.
No, because he has nothing
on yourself, so to
missing.
speak.
Like there's no
And
hole
so
in his ear.
When I was in the Marine Corps, I defended Marines accused of crimes at courts martial. And there were certain clients
It's almost like
got
he just
acquitted at
puts on
trial.
fucking
They were found not
weight
guilty.
to his earlobe.
That wasn't
throughout his
because the
entire life.
prosecutors
Either that or he
failed
has some
at their job.
big ass ears.
That was because they did their job, because they provided me with the evidence where I could defend my client. That's how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
And we need that in every U.S. Attorney's office.
No, thank you. Ms. Oyer, you know, that's an incredible decision to resign, and it's resigning from a job you love.
Why does he look like a thumb?
And working with people that you respect and admire. And then obviously the personal and professional implications that you're going to have to deal with for some time. So obviously there was a commitment to a culture that you saw being breached, and I'm going to ask you just to elaborate a bit on that.
So I was actually fired. The decision was taken out of my
yeah.
hands.
Well, you knew what would happen.
Yes.
You were fired. Yeah, I'm
that
sorry.
My role in the department was becoming increasingly untenable every day. It was becoming more and more difficult every day to do the job in a way that was consistent with my values and my obligations as an attorney. And honestly, on some level, it was a relief to be fired, to take the decision out of my hands,
Right.
although it required me to leave behind a mission that I cared deeply about and a
Yo,
team
what's
of
up with the
people
dude in
who
the
I care
background?
deeply about. And I take some heart in the fact that
This motherfucker looks like he's about to go American Psycho right now. Either that or he's just trying not to puke.
they are still there carrying on the good work.
And you literally had a couple of armed marshals
What is happening
en
in the
route to your
background?
home when your teenage child was home alone?
That's correct.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to go back to you, Mr. Crosswell. Do you treat subordinates that way? I mean, is that at all acceptable?
No, Senator.
All right. And Ms. Cohen, you were friends with our beloved Mr. Raskin's son, and we've heard a lot about him. And I can only imagine the kind of commitment to public service you had and found a way when you accepted an opportunity to work at a major and prestigious law firm. Tell me about how you saw being in Skadden Arps, a major Wall Street, really world law firm, is being also an opportunity for you to live your values
Jennifer,
as an
don't
attorney.
blame it
You're
on the
committed to
lighting.
justice and also have an opportunity to work for folks who otherwise wouldn't be represented.
Absolutely. In part, I'm realizing that it was just very good marketing, but I do think that while I was on the job, I had unlimited pro bono hours. It was perhaps the most important thing to me when selecting a law
Mr.
firm.
Weld.
Because I wanted to get trained up on the private sector things. My past work was in public education, and I needed to understand how those things work. It drew me to finance. But I devoted anywhere from 20 to 33% of my hours to pro bono every year.
Nah, that don't work.
And ultimately, that is why I resigned. I'd love to say it was an abstract rule of law, anything else, but I did a decent amount of immigration pro bono representation, and actions by this administration are making it very clear that that is soon going to be viewed, or already is viewed, as adverse to the administration, despite the fact that it is just to allow people to survive when they are fleeing harm and persecution and death. And I couldn't stay at a place that I knew was on the verge of not allowing me to take representations that the president viewed as adverse, knowing what he views as adverse to him.
Right. Well, thank you all very much.
Wait. So, you quit your job because you were doing pro bono immigration cases, and you know that would be adverse to the Trump administration, so you quit your job. I'm supposed to feel bad for you. Why? I mean, y'all are the ones literally screaming about due process. Okay, cool. So you quit your job so they don't have due process. It's like y'all are creating your own problems so you can sit there and say, we can solve this yet the fuck again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I want to thank all of our witnesses for testifying today. Everyone in this room grew up in a period since World War II where we
We're
were
almost finished.
used to seeing a world that was ever increasing in its freedoms. We saw walls come down. We saw new nations born. We saw the ever greater ability to express ourselves, to practice our faith, to associate with whom we would. And we came to believe it was inexorable. We came to believe that it was like the laws of gravity. Or it was, as Martin Luther King said, the moral arc of the universe always bending towards justice. Until all of a sudden it wasn't bending towards justice. And we've come to realize, much to our shock, that there's nothing inevitable about this. There's nothing inevitable about democracy or democratization, that this experiment in this country, this great experiment, self-governance, now 2.5 centuries old, is not inevitable. It was improbable at its start. And we've witnessed something we never would have imagined in this country. We have witnessed with incredible rapidity the creation of a climate of fear by this administration. We see
these fuckers will live
universities
forever.
afraid to speak out, to defend their own
look at
students, to
McConnell.
defend their own academic freedom.
You don't
see
think
universities
UPED
rushing
right
to
next
make
to him,
deals
Brett
with the
Foreskin,
administration.
is
You
going to
see
live forever.
universities cowed into silence, not stepping up to defend other.
The motherfucker beat cancer and then got a whole head of hair back immediately. Y'all notice that? Like you said, he had cancer, started wearing do-rags. You can still see hair on the side. Oh, what? He lost it up top. He started wearing fucking do-rags, and then all of a sudden, I beat cancer, rips off the fucking do-rag, and there's more hair there than has ever been before. So what cancer did you have? Did you have cancer where your hair follicles grew out of control? And you had to get your hair cut every fucking day or something? Like, what happened? What was that? No, he's spray tanning too. He looks orange. Wait a minute. Let me help. Filters. Add a filter. We're going to do color correction. Let's do contrast. Oh, that's the whole screen. Saturation. Saturation should do it. There we go. Orange man. He blends in with the background. That actually does look. That kind of makes it look better, though.
Universities. You see members of the press excluded from public events because they don't use the administration's favored parlance. And you don't see other members of the press in solidarity with them. You see law firms rush to cut separate deals. You see lawyers purged from the Department of Justice. You see FBI agents purged from the Bureau. You see scientists purged from their agencies. A wholesale effort to weed out and drive out anyone of independent thinking, anyone who will stand up and defend the rule of law or science or the freedom of thought or expression, right down to ordinary citizens who are now afraid. If the government of the United States can pluck a man off the street and send him to a prison in El Salvador without any kind of due process or any process whatsoever,
still blending into the back? What the
then
fuck?
no one is safe. And if the government's response to that is to discipline a lawyer who dares to speak the truth to a court,
his skin is wood color,
then no one is safe. And the answer to this climate of fear, there really is only one answer, and you're seeing it today, and that is courage. We must demonstrate courage in the face of this fear. In this very committee room, or one like it, Joseph McCarthy and his allies made the country afraid and caused people to inform on each other and betray each other, allowed people and to be driven out of the government and to be persecuted.
You did the same.
And we wondered how that could be. We wondered how could so many people be complicit.
I wonder, how could so many people could be complicit with your lies about Russian, what was it? Russian foreign influence, the Russiagate, all that shit, the Ukraine fucking bullshit, to try to impeach a president who was just asking what the fuck this is about? What about all that shit, Schiff? Come on now. Yeah. What about that hard evidence? What about that irrefutable fucking proof? What about that? You want to sit there and, oh, everybody's got to stand up. We got to stand up to this. Stand up to what? To stand up to what? 70, damn near 80% of this country is now saying, something's happening and something's good here now. We're liking what we're seeing. Even the people that don't like that fat fuck are saying it. What are you talking about, Schiff?
Well, now we know. Now we know. Now we have witnessed it in our own time. But I will say this of the brave witnesses who have come and testified today. All of the rest of us have to ask ourselves, looking back at the McCarthy era, what would we have done? What would we have done?
You did.
If we were faced with the loss of our jobs, if we were faced with the loss of our livelihood, if we were faced with the loss of our position, what would we have done? Well,
what did the American people do when you did it to us?
Your being here is all the answer anyone could demand, and we are deeply, deeply grateful to you. I yield to my colleague and friend, Jamie Raskin.
Thank you, Senator Schiff, and thank you for your leadership. It's been an honor to conduct this proceeding with you, with all these wonderful guests and everybody looking at the proceedings across America. And thank you to our great witnesses here. Ben Franklin once said, "Make yourself a sheep and the wolves will eat you." And you are for people who have not made yourselves into sheep. You've shown us how to stand tough and stand strong against tyranny and despotism. And you and all of my colleagues here are speaking today in the spirit of our Constitution. We have an anti-monarchical Constitution. We've got no kings here. We have the freedom of speech. We've got no queens here, no emperors here, and we have no slaves here, and we have no serfs here. Just people, citizens, all of us together. Why are you trying to
implement them into our system, Raskin?
Under the Equal Protection Clause, we have an anti-monarchical Constitution. It forbids titles of nobility. It was so important to the framers. Congress cannot award or recognize titles of nobility. We've got an anti-cruelty Constitution. The Eighth Amendment bans cruel and unusual punishment. We've got an anti-corruption Constitution. It guarantees due process to everyone. It guarantees equal protection under the laws, as well as freedom of speech and freedom of the press and free assembly, the right to petition government for redress of grievances, free exercise of religion, no establishment of religion. And so we say to the courts, as Ms. Cohen said, you're an important line of defense. I don't think that you're the last line of defense. I think the people will always be the last line of defense, but you're a significant line of defense for us right now. We have 68 court orders that have been rendered by federal district courts, preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders against all of the lawlessness that's taken place. And we hope that the U.S. Supreme Court, which we know Donald Trump bragged about having packed and stacked in order to overthrow Roe versus Wade and get the Dobbs decision. We know that the court may be in a different posture on some of these things, but we ask all of the justices to live their oaths of office to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law. I ask them, I ask everybody in Congress, I ask everybody in the country to go back and read the Steele seizure case from 1952.
The reason why these people don't have a job is because they didn't do that, Raskin.
President Truman ordered the seizure of the steel mills in the middle of a war, in the middle of the Korean War. He said it was a national security crisis and we couldn't afford to have a strike and a standoff between the unions and the management. And so he just ordered that all of the steel mills be seized. And the Supreme Court came back with a remarkable decision saying the president gets his power only from either the explicit text of the Constitution or from Congress. And Congress had already rejected the idea that the president should have the power to seize the steel mills. And so the court said in a 6-3 decision, the Constitution doesn't grant you that power, and Congress forbade you that power. And Justice Jackson, in his famous concurrence, said, at that point, your power, Mr. President, is at its lowest ebb. But here's the remarkable thing about the decision, which is indeed the paradigm for interpreting executive power, as Justice Amy Coney Barrett said in her confirmation hearings over here in the Senate. The remarkable thing about the decision is that there were 9 Democrats, most of them New Deal liberal Democrats, on the Supreme Court at that moment. President Roosevelt had been in for 4 terms. Truman had come in. These people, they were friends. A lot of the justices had served in the Roosevelt administration or in the Truman administration. Some had been in the Department of Justice. And in fact, the 3 justices in dissent taunted them, saying, you said this was totally fine. You wanted this to be a power that the president would have. And now you're on the court and you're saying the president does have this power. But it was really their finest moment because they distinguished their roles as partisans when they were either in Congress or in the administration from their role as justices upholding the Constitution and the rule of law. And they said, despite the fact that this was their team, they could not allow the president to overstep his bounds in that way. And after the case was rendered, Justice Jackson was so nervous that President Truman would never speak to him again that he had a dinner party with all the justices, and he invited President
No one cares,
Truman
Raskin.
to come over there. And there was a round of toasts, and Truman said to Justice Jackson, well, I don't know if I like your law that much, but this is a hell of a good bourbon you're serving us tonight. So we hope that the justices will live up to their titles. They're the only jurists in the federal system who get the title of justice. Everybody else is a judge, and we hope these justices will act with justice. And I want to just say finally about the law firms, because I've been working with Senator Blumenthal and with Ms. Scanlon on the question of the law firms. There is no safety in appeasement. There just is no safety in appeasement. These law firms have bargained away $40 million, tens of millions of dollars in pro bono assistance. Well, now, if Donald Trump gets to choose who your clients are going to be, right, and you're going to end up representing, I don't know, the National Rifle Association, the National Right to Life Committee, you name it, anti-environment, anti-LGBTQ, whatever it is. Now, not only are you going to have to put the resources of your firm into these causes on behalf of a president who just shook your firm down, but you're not going to be able to take any of the clients on the other side, because that's a conflict now. You are conflicted out of representing the pro-environment, the pro-choice groups, the unions, if you've taken the people on the other side. There is no safety in appeasing a tyrant. There's no safety in selling out. And these people are teaching us what the meaning of the rule of law really is. Ben Franklin said, we must all hang together or we will all hang separately. Let's hang together right now. Let's stand tall, America, for our Constitution, our rule of law, and our democracy. And I yield back to you, Senator Schiff.
I thank you.
It would be a glorious day in America if that were to happen.
We are adjourned.
That was a whole big round of 2 hours of suckle jerk. You know, I got to change up everything. I got to change the tag. I got to change the title. I got to change all that because I was supposed to do the House Rules hearing. My wife should be home here soon, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that and spend some time with her tonight. But yeah, I was supposed to do the House Rules hearing. We may come back. Well, we're definitely coming back with some more tomorrow. It'll be another early morning kind of thing for us. There are some other ones that I do want to touch on. I got to do a little bit of editing for this one because I didn't do anything House Rules related. So fuck me, right? But until then, ladies and gentlemen, look, the YouTube side has now been monetized. We can take YouTube super chat, or we can take members and super chats now. We got a lot planned. We got a lot that is moving down the pike, including for the Rumble side. We got to get locals involved in that. I got a lot of work to do on the back end of this. But for right now, I appreciate every single one of you. I'm going to go ahead and call it and fix all my mess ups on the setup for this. But until then, y'all have a good night. We'll see you again very soon.
Comes a president. We can't start our own little business here.
That's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning. These ladies know that I'm sinning, and this is just the beginning. I'm closing in the night getting. There ain't no point in resisting. Living life like a dream, live it right, that's the thing. Every night got a team, I've been tied to the scene. Out on stage, here I'm screaming, okay, it's a dream. And I pray as a team, one day it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get it. Head down, don't regret it. Push myself to the limit. If I play it, then I win it. I'm just saying, I'm just living for today. For a minute, I don't stay, I just visit. Have no shame, I admit it. Looking me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe. They're looking up to me. They want the best best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the